The president of Korea proclaims the world's demise when a zombie-spawning meteor crashes into Japan, transforming its people into ravenous creatures craving flesh. Chaos erupts and everywhere erupts in frenzy as the world faces its end. Confusion reigns, with no one sure where safety lies. Yet there is one lone soul well prepared for this moment. He possesses a sanctuary in an alternate realm and has awaited his chance to destroy a swarm of zombies. This individual is our protagonist, Sean Ho. Several months prior, Zung Ho and his companions dove into Sura, an infamously punishing virtual survival game. Its extreme difficulty led most gamers to abandon it in frustration. In a final act of disloyalty, Zong Ho's group deserted him by never returning to the game. Left by himself, he continued to stream and brave hordes of monsters, gradually becoming a master player. Growing weary of his circumstances, he eventually set aside his VR headset and erased all of his visible game recordings. Zong Ho redirected his focus, becoming a cook and finding delight in serving one particular endearing customer. On a whim, he chants status window aloud in daily life, and is utterly astonished when a blue tech-like panel truly materializes in front of him. This mysterious screen displays his personal attributes. They match those from his beloved game, yet now feature an original skill, Private Portal. Curious, Sean Ho activates it, summoning a person-sized gateway through space. His thoughts swirl, trying to grasp how perilous this new phenomena is. Because if the game's story is bleeding into reality, that meteor, herald of ruin, will soon arrive. Hunting for answers online, Ho haphazardly unearths an article about the looming cosmic onslaught. He is unable to come to terms with game events happening in the living world. The young man fixes his gaze on the swirling portal before him. Having seen both the reportage of the meteor and his own portal, he begins to accept that reality is unraveling. He pauses, gripped by uncertainty over entering this enigmatic doorway. Possessing no special gifts or resources and with empty pockets, he mulls over the prospect of stepping through. Ultimately, he reflects carefully and selects the closest ladle as a makeshift tool. Holding it at arm's length, he probes the portal cautiously, hoping to taste the nature of what awaits. After scooping up a sample of Earth, it dawns on him that the destination isn't one of the game's winding labyrinths. This revelation is welcome, yet he also faces the possibility that the portal simply deposits him somewhere isolated on his own planet. Once he packs a travel bag, he offers himself words of courage and finally steps through. Instantly, his eyes meet the splendor of this foreign place. All around stretches an unspoiled landscape with no trace of city life. At first, what most stands out is the penetrating chill, a sharp contrast from home. Finding that his phone cannot connect, he surmises he's been transported to a sequestered region, one where rescue won't come easily. Cutting to the chase, the situation spells serious trouble if he remains marooned there. Uncapping a Sharpie, he inscribes a bold 0 upon the bark of one tree. This clever act is his anchor, a quiet insurance against truly losing himself in the labyrinth of his wandering. He presses onward, step after step, caught in the grip of mounting exhaustion as the journey wears him down. The green expanse stretches on, seemingly without boundary, nothing distinguishable breaking its monotony. Just as our fellow is pleading silently for a spark of excitement, a beast fixes him with a luminous glare close by. In a breath, this being lunges like an agile hunter, nearly scaring the wits out of our adventurer. Thankfully, it reveals itself as a splendid valley deer rather than some fabled, carnivorous terror. Fascinatingly, the system swiftly detects and catalogs the rare creature, confirming once more that he is well beyond the bounds of the known Earth. The animal fixes its eyes on him for a moment more before silently darting away into the dense woods. It's not as though I'd imagined the creature would strike up a casual conversation, but the silence still speaks volumes. Even our wanderer considers it odd for the animal to vanish so abruptly. At least the deer posed no threat, which is a comfort, though an encounter with more hostile beings like savage apes or wild boars could spell real trouble. Another uncanny thing is this: the valley deer never made an appearance in the Sura game. From the outset, he's had a piercing suspicion that this world is governed by the rules and ethos of survival itself. Drawing a blade, he continues on, braced for all manner of surprises that the wilderness may unveil. Up to this stage, he's tried to reject the grim prophecy of impending human ruin. Yet as despair crept in, he finally stumbled upon what he was seeking. His gaze was captivated by a radiant sun apple, an enchanting fruit, warm and golden, invitingly suspended above. With care, he twisted it free from the branch. He hesitated, questioning if it truly was safe to taste. After a moment's deliberation, he bit in, and a rush of change overtook him at once. The system flagged enhanced stamina, and a yellow aura laced itself around his form. The return pressed upon him felt synonymous with the legendary sun apple juice renowned from his in-game days. One detail even more reassuringly clear underlined this proof. The evidence was now undeniable. Something calamitous loomed near. He was also uncomfortably close to where goblins had left unpleasant traces, demanding increased vigilance. Xiango, filled with dread, exhales deeply to bolster his resolve. In spite of every ounce of skepticism, it at last becomes apparent that the world's twilight is on the horizon. After experiencing the portal's effects, he returned from that dimension to his everyday reality. There, Xiang Ho began searching his mind for answers. Determined to persevere through the nearing disaster, his first step was to archive every shred of footage from the game and secure it away in his private hard drive. Fortunately for him, his habit was to record his gameplay sessions as live streams, granting quick access to those logs, even though their future relevance was never something he could have predicted. One day, headlines blared news of an encroaching asteroid. Ruin would soon descend upon Japan in 32 days, marking the countdown to the world's end. Until that clock ran out, he committed himself to preparation. After all, the digital adventure had unleashed some truly abominable mechanics on its players. Among the chaos, what most unhinged and threatened survivors was a blight called the Iron Death Disease. This unstoppable phenomenon gnawed through every metal surface it touched, dissolving civilization's steel skeleton. Buildings crumbled to powder, feeding chaos that swept in zombie mobs mere hours after devastation struck. With iron and steel erased from existence, society reverted overnight to a primitive era. The Iron Death's effect ebbed, eventually fading in the digital world, though not before a whole year of havoc. For all its menace, this affliction meant little to our protagonist, who now possessed a reliable means to traverse safely through his personal portal courtesy of his newest attribute. Naturally, Shan Ho staunchly believed the sickness could not breach the divide of his mysterious doorway. Wrapping up his reflections, he invested every coin he had into the best possible gear. The ultimate survival challenge, the reality of a live-action Call of Duty zombie outrage, loomed, and his pack brimmed with equipment meant for enduring the storm. As night fell and the forums flickered on his screen, Xiang Ho couldn't help but grow disheartened by those few who misused their awakened gifts for selfish thrills and petty crime. Dawn brought him to the marketplace once more, where he stocked up on essentials to better prepare for the quest awaiting him. On his journey home, the bro picked up a hunting bow, this time for Shiety. Amidst these errands, a realization dawned upon him. Zhang Ho considered the possibility that he might be giving in too much thought to everything. Perhaps he was leaping too far ahead and moving with reckless speed. Even so, he felt he could recover his spent funds with time, irrespective of whether his assumptions were wrong. Once his morning tasks were completed, he made his way back and placed a closed sign at the door of his shop. Deep in his musings, Xian Ho was abruptly interrupted by the sound of someone's voice. Chu Chahain from Solo Leveling approached, her tone tinged with worry as she inquired about the shop's sudden closure. He reassured her. It was merely for renovation work, prompting her to speculate if he had come into some serious money after a lucky break. With hasty words, Shan Ho cut their conversation short, citing pressing tasks, yet she stepped in front of him and attempted to voice a question. The girl then grew bashful, stumbling before she could fully articulate her request, and soon she turned and walked away. Seon Ho's curiosity flared about what she was trying to ask, but rather than pressing her, he chose instead to return to his own pursuits. Inside, he made a vow to dedicate himself wholly to what truly mattered most. His resolve was simple: I won't be distracted by mischief makers, I'll truly focus. With a command, he called the portal open. If you observed his strategy in games, he wasn't so much a brute force player but a thoughtful tactician. He was the type who relished formulating clever plans to rise above each challenge. Combat prowess wasn't his forte. Instead, he relied predominantly on keen reasoning. There was an uncomplicated logic to this approach. In Sura's world, gaining stat points isn't a straightforward process granted by leveling. One only earns these after defeating monsters and venturing into the unknown. Now, our protagonist is within the parallel realm, refining his archery skills. Lacking any previous training, Bro turns to YouTube tutorials as his silent instructors. His posture firm, Zango aligns himself for a careful shot. With a flicker of memory like scenes borrowed from his gaming years, he steadies his breath and releases the arrow. The arrow whirls through the air and strikes true, embedding itself in the target. Bemused by his innate ability, Bro stands in awe, even wondering for a moment if fate favored him in secret. Yet, as his hand throbs painfully, Songho recognizes that his greatest shortcoming is his physical power. It was now vital for him to strengthen his body and achieve greater stamina. With his preliminary groundwork finished, it was time to embark upon the following phase. First on the agenda was devising a sensible tactic to track and hunt monsters. After that, he needed a solid base, somewhere safe to stash his goods with peace of mind. But for the present, the absence of equipment and supplies plagued him, as all his gear was still en route. While awaiting his items, he dedicated himself to gathering golden apples, riding a streak of uncanny fortune with their discovery. Having mapped out several fruitful sites, he drilled himself in readiness for impending chaos. Early vigilance was perhaps what sustained him through long days in Sura's hostile land. A short while later, Zhangho made an encounter with goblin refuse in the wild. He had been searching for it with a straightforward purpose in mind. You see, goblins have a knack for congregating, but the solitary bit of their refuse, yes, actual excrement, on the ground suggested there was but one around these parts. Turning investigative, Promax deduced from examining the dung that this goblin was likely a lone outcast. Shan Ho reasoned this individual goblin might be a rare advantage. And so by nightfall, his determined hunt for that solitary creature continued. As nearby wolves howled, a clear sign the valley grew nearer, he suddenly caught sight of the very goblin he'd been tracking. Concealed behind a sturdy tree, Xian Ho could discern without doubt the creature mirrored those from the virtual world he'd known so well. After all, goblins are famed as the weakest of monsters, their armory limited to crude spears and poisonous darts. Their notorious reputation springs from their brutal habit of tormenting and mangling their foes. This was precisely why our protagonist initially selected a ranged weapon, a bow, as his faithful companion. Judging by its appearance, this particular goblin was elderly and in an abysmal state. It was unarmed, giving Soho the perfect moment to swiftly ready his bow. He's certain that steady nerves will grant him victory. The arrow is released and slices cleanly through the goblin's arm. Although Xiang Ho had aimed for the creature's skull, he accepts the solid result with quiet satisfaction. Pressing his opportunity, he tries quickly for a second shot, but the goblin hurls a stone with such force that Xiang Ho's weapon is knocked right from his grip. Shan Ho now senses he's squaring off against a seasoned and clever goblin adversary. Both draw their blades, standing poised for a close-quarters clash. The fateful duel between Sunjin Wu and Beru is set to ignite. Oh, but that's a different tale entirely. Shan Ho arms himself with a knife and aims a quick slash at the goblin's side. His opponent deftly dodges and retaliates by delivering a fierce blow to Shan's kneecap. With hardly a pause, Shan Ho wrestles the creature to the ground, pinning it beneath him. Here at last he holds the upper hand. Xiang Ho drives the knife deep into the beast's chest. A cry of agony bursts from it. Soon, the glimmer of life vanishes from the goblin's eyes. He has claimed his inaugural victory, for which Ho is rewarded with 2 points. In disbelief over his accomplishment, he quickly surveys the area and discovers both guaca powder and vegetable oil. Combining these in the game would yield a healing salve, but first, he must hasten to dig. Leaving this goblin exposed is perilous. It could attract its kin, leading them to hunt down Zhang Ho. Letting the corpse decay in the open spells trouble too, for it may reanimate as something called a bone creeper. Nearby, Zhang Ho happens upon a duo of red trouts. Zion Ho feels dread tighten in his chest. As soon as he looks away, he realizes with a chill that a monstrous, unsettling owl is gazing down at him. Before continuing, we are drawn back to Zhang Ho's experiences in the game from his days as a player. Throughout his live streams, he assembled a trove of in-depth material on the game's mysteries. Several supporters even contributed funds, urging him to delve directly into the heart of these secrets. Seong Ho delved deep and previously recounted his hazardous encounters with goblins and kobolds. He emphasized that steering clear of bone creepers was critical, yet the real peril stemmed from two terrifying forest denizens. Namely, these were the fearsome werewolves and looming owl bears. Owl bears, by fiercely guarding their land, uphold the equilibrium of all monstrous beings in the wild. The memories from the streaming days stir a gentle warmth in Sean Ho's chest. Among his followers was Bulungman, a perpetual ray of joy who cheered him on without fail. There were others too, a laid-back yet eccentric bunch like the one incessant chatter named Barking Dog Dude, always peppering the chat with endless woof for unknown reasons. Curiously, Seon Ho ponders why such bright recollections come flooding back now. Could it be because he finds himself staring directly at a nightmare in physical form? A beast stands ready to claim his life, yet Zong Ho clings to denial. It is as if those old remembrances urge him to stay sharp. Each fleeting moment becomes a shot at crafting an escape. He knows well the deadly wrath of the owl bear, a savage that shreds every obstacle. Yet its stillness now betrays a lack of desperate hunger. What truly needles his nerves, however, is the realization that they have wandered into the territory ruled by the fierce red trout. Balanced at the edge of all these insights, Xiang Ho senses there remains a solitary path that might deliver him from this waking nightmare. He pivots on his heel and steels his mind, reminding himself that despite his body resembling Kang Ho, the mind of Kimup Joa still pulses within. With tightened jaw, he summons the nerve to confront the beast directly. A last, unwavering testament to his desire to live. The formidable creature fixes him with its menacing gaze and lunges in a predatory assault. Known for unmatched prowess beneath the moon, the owl bear's great curse is when caught in sunlight. From countless plays, Xiang Ho has its behavior ingrained, knowing he has exactly 12 minutes to claim the chance at survival. Synchronizing with the monster's charge, Xiang Ho deftly dodges its brutal swipe, all while plotting a way to conjure light that might frighten his foe. Spurred by adrenaline, he sprints along the creature's massive limb and, pulling a flashlight from his kit, blasts radiant brilliance into its eyes. The shock is so jarring, even the fearsome owl bear reels in total blindness, rendered helpless by the glare. Next, we find our hero languishing in his bed, the alarm blaring and his spirit weighted with fatigue. Knowing he must rise despite the aches embroidering his body from head to toe after yesterday's ordeal is no small thing. Sean Ho had collapsed in utter exhaustion the moment he returned. The last thing he recalls is the desperate sprint for his life after dazzling the beast. Fate took a twisted turn, thrusting him from the clutches of a goblin straight into the path of an owl bear. Bro can't bear the thought of a repeat scuffle, and musters enough will to attempt finding something to eat. He ends up collapsing face first onto the floor, fully aware by the pain in his legs that he desperately overexerted himself. Thankfully, his stash of golden apples from the other world remains untouched. He seizes an apple and bites into it, instantly bathed in new vigor by its restorative magic. A rush of vitality surges within. He now deliberates whether to finally fill his grumbling stomach in earnest. Once freshened up, Bro coincidentally bumps into Chu Chahain once more. She just so happens to have chosen a different place to dine, and their paths cross again by fate's hand. Xiang Ho hadn't set out searching for companionship, yet she took this seat because dining alongside someone else brings her a small joy. Mikhayon quickly inquires if he attempted to access the status window. Her eagerness makes Yang Ho realize that this must have been on her mind previously, though she'd held herself back. Mikhayon presents him with news updates and insists it's genuine. Some of the awakened have begun using their abilities to rob others, and Zion Ho finds himself somewhat taken aback by her openness in broaching such a subject. His reply is a fib. He claims the status screen revealed nothing. To be truthful, Zhang Ho firmly believes that withholding the truth about himself is the better route for all. For starters, his talent is more cunning than aggressive. It's a gift best kept close rather than revealed. At this moment, he can't even guarantee his own well-being. Were he to expose his abilities to the woman in the scarlet dress, namely to her, it could easily spell disaster for him. It's a clever tactic, Still, he can't help but be curious as to why Mikhaeyong is so invested in this awakening issue, and soon she surprises him. She falters, then even confesses she hasn't been entirely truthful. Seong-ho takes her words in good faith, reassuring her there's no need to push herself to speak. He tells her not to rush, that there's plenty of time, and after their chat heads home not long after. Happily, his parcels have finally shown up. With his new supplies, his worries about provisions fade. He hauls it all up to the roof, reserving only essential things for the second floor. In prepping, he carefully selects a range of gear he'll need for today's objective. Items like respirators, protective outfits, and other field tools fill his kit, as he plots to claim a safe retreat for himself. Establishing a stronghold is paramount, hence the reason for carrying an axe. Stepping through the gateway, Seong-ho gets his first solid clue toward finding a future hideaway. While seeking out the old goblin, he stumbles upon a cave that belongs to goblins. He recalls where it lies, returns to just that place, and there it is. The location proves inconveniently perfect for his hiding needs. It suits his blueprint flawlessly. Yet priority 1, confirming which creatures currently inhabit this spot. Seong-ho canvasses the area and discovers small cobalt tracks on the ground. This, in truth, is a reason to be pleased. The kobolds aren't much trouble at all. Seho's arrival didn't hinge on hope. He came with a ready plan to defeat lesser foes, so there's no need for anxiety. The thing about kobolds, they live by night. Sleeping now, the boy's strategy is set. He intends to quietly eliminate them inside. To start, he assembles a heap of wood by lopping off a few limbs from nearby trees. Soon after, he places this gathered wood by the threshold. His following move is to drench the stack with gasoline. Seong-ho fancied himself clearing this challenge effortlessly now. He only needed to spark the flames, nothing more. Yet in that moment, an unexpected ruckus hit his ears. They shed away the chains of sleep and instantly fixated hungrily on their forthcoming prey. Seong-ho softly acknowledges their presence, but then swiftly swings out his axe and rushes into the fray. With one fluid motion, he slices across both creatures' throats, ending them in an instant. Their rapid defeat lies in the sleepy haze lingering from just moments before. These quick successes earn him a new level and 4 treasured points as the system's blessing. Seong-ho then chucks the lighter straight into the firewood pile. Moments later, the thick, noxious smoke starts swirling inside. Within the Sura world, lesser beasts all share one fatal flaw: they fall prey to unfamiliar forces, and this trick took full advantage. Armed with a gas mask, he took watch outdoors. While a direct fire assault might work, this approach proved cleaner and better for dealing with the aftermath. The dozing kobolds scrambled awake, stampeding through the entrance to escape harm's way. Seong-ho meticulously chose this tactic to sap their strength and throw their ranks into disarray. When they staggered into the open, he intended to strike while they reeled, eliminating them in one fell effort. Yet he'd anticipated more, 5 appearing at least. But Seong-ho couldn't hide his astonishment when only 4 stumbled out, not their expected 7. With precision, Seong-ho targets and dispatches 1 kobold. Now only 3 remain, he announces. The trio surges toward him, desperate but largely ineffective in their attack. But his axe waits, and so do his solid reflexes. Handling his weapon like a batter, he skillfully takes his enemies down. Another kobold charges, but the potent, overwhelming spray of stench leaves it stumbling, vision clouded. Not letting the beast recover, Seong-ho swiftly brings his blade down and ends its misery. 1 opponent left, their chieftain trembles nervously under our hero's silent, steady gaze. Now hunter and hunted have traded places as he proclaims their demise, adding that their den will serve his purposes shortly. The slaughter subsides and Seong-ho collapses breathless to the earth. Truly, his endurance betrays him, their weakness hardly threatened, yet weariness is his truest foe. Notably, even the characteristic stats used by the system here mirror the game's. The exhaustion debuff and lack of progress in points after leveling echo that world perfectly. Surpassing levels shall slowly grant him fresh shop wares to enjoy, which offers its own small satisfaction. What pleases him most now, however, is the freedom to claim a small sanctuary for himself. Yet as much as the young man longed for some order indoors, he found his hopes dashed by the chaos the kobolds had stirred. Once his base was secured, a round of meticulous cleaning began. He was forced to sweep away so much goblin filth that exhaustion set in. Scrubbing all that refuse proved truly vexatious, especially following the genuine battle he'd just won. Seiho couldn't help but mutter curses at those wretched creatures for turning their home into a rubbish heap. Even so, now with a brand new headquarters, his worries faded. Every time Shan Ho needed to haul refuse, he simply journeyed to his own world, a handy advantage, though the cleanup still devoured much of his time. What astounds him most is how simply items can transition between realities. So he used a pipe taken from his world and got it working in the other, even managing to surprise himself by its flawless function. Despite many laborious hours, the den now gleamed and sparkled. Next, it was time to remove blood marks and pour concrete, to ensure storage would no longer be a hassle. He mulled over the hassles of working with mortar and the practicality of assembling sandwich panels. Yet what redemptive feature this dismal cavern did have was its abundance of radiant stones and easy ignition rocks. Such common materials are usually starting resources in the game, but their plentiful presence made this place quite the find. Shan Ho thus became motivated to return with proper equipment and fully mine the cave after his building was finished. When dawn breaks, the man finds himself pushed to the limits of his endurance. Unrelenting work has left his muscles screaming. Eyeing his arm, he notes with faint amazement the handful of scrapes he sustained. The trinkets amassed from the strange world wait idly atop a side table. Shan Go debates if now is the perfect moment to whip up some salve. The procedure is straightforward enough. He pairs guaca powder and the vegetable in equal measure. The next step is a bit of mixing and voila, a simple healing ointment is ready. Thanks to his culinary expertise, our hero finds fashioning them far less burdensome. Just smoothing the ointment over his wounds feels like genuine progress. Still, Shan Ho can't shake off the worry that this routine might become a regular necessity. He contemplates whether to invest time perfecting foundational skills to increase his stats. Nevertheless, with peril round every corner, he frets that fate may claim him long before any apocalypse arrives. Though the prospect is so dark it borders on comedic, Xiang Ho isn't about to gamble with his survival, settling on a safer weapon, perhaps a firearm. Abruptly, a realization flares within him. There is, without doubt, something he can exploit. Distinct from the main narrative, the game's very lore might hold the answer. Yet a crucial question gnaws at him. Will this hidden lore be relevant in the looming catastrophe ahead? Making good use of this insight, Shan Ho organizes his thoughts and fervently hopes that those backstory events will unfold, bringing him some truly unexpected advantages. With resolve guiding him, he heads up to the rooftop, ready to collect the construction materials he'd had delivered. Unlatching the portal's door, the boy proceeds to fling each of the bags over to the opposite side, one after another. When he finishes, he heads off to gather a few more belongings before descending to the ground level. At this spot, just as he prepares to handle a stack of parcels, that familiar girl appears unexpectedly once again. Xiang Ho begins to question if she's become too much at ease in his presence these days. Without mincing words, he voices his thoughts to her directly, leaving the girl feeling sheepish. He reassures her of his busyness due to renovation duties, and she readily believes he's being sincere. Still, what catches her off guard is his neglect to stop in for his usual quarterly trim. Xiang Ho recalls her point, realizing a hair trim will be necessary before heading on his upcoming adventure, so he abandons his tasks and walks over to her salon. Arriving there, Bro's resemblance to a Korean take on Moist Critical is uncanny. He demands she erase all his hair, stepping into fearless buzzcut territory. Though taken aback, she complies. What draws her attention is how unexpectedly broad Shan Ho's shoulders have gotten, though let's be real, few girls would openly admit such things. He explains he's been exercising vigorously, and meanwhile, Mikyong delves into the mysteries of the status window and survival life game, insisting only those who have played are awakeners. Shang-ho plays along, answering everything but slyly wonders aloud about her intriguing source. Just then, a tattooed fellow strolls into the shop, announcing he's arrived for some fresh scoop. Amusingly enough, this person's previous run-in with Seiho was through a singing contest, and our boy finds himself irritated that this fool supplies her with intel. The blonde simply remarks to her that some individual deletes old broadcasts, hoarding all insights for himself. It's an odd and tense scene, particularly as this man openly announces his goal to track a certain player down in real life. Xiangho grows even more intrigued by the enigmatic person being discussed. When in drops the name Kimbab Jojo, Zhangho's online alias, the plot thickens, and now our boy realizes folks are genuinely seeking him. In-Han pushes the girl to take a daring leap and consider joining their group. Sean H. Go, meanwhile, just finds the whole ordeal painfully foolish. The real reason he'd removed that stream was pure disillusionment. Personal gain never crossed his mind. After all, that poser only wants to play the expert. He continues venting, berating Zhangho for ghosting everyone without posting any recaps, clueless that the target he seeks is right before him. Zhangho starts to wonder if the rest of the community feels the same, making him question whether he ought to share knowledge for once. Determined, Bro abruptly stands to confront In, admonishing him for barging in and messing up his haircut midway through. In attempts to act the tough guy in front of him, but when met with Shangho's deadly stare, he's commanded to leave unless he'd prefer another lesson in defeat. Daunted, the braggart slips out of the salon with the lady saying her goodbyes. Mikhayon, visibly relieved, seems comforted. Noticing her worry, our boy requests her contact only because the man struck him as a genuine buffoon capable of trouble. Back in his room, our protagonist now cuts a dashing figure sporting his brand new style. To begin, he turned his attention to his screen name, searching for tidings about himself within the depths of the forum. What awaited him there was deeply unsettling, an entire sea of posts saturated with bitter curses and harsh words aimed at him. Wave after wave of animosity washed over him until he eventually came across In Hawk's handle. This jester of a man had opted for a mere nickname, even with authentication features plainly available. His own profile was utterly overrun by a deluge of scathing remarks targeting our protagonist. A true disparager and a consummate Redditor, embodying its spirit, mind, and character. With that, Zhangho powered down his computer, recognizing this to be the only fitting response. His mind stood unshaken, only let down, yet odd tranquility slid into his thoughts as he commanded the mysterious portal. The next 2 days saw him busy perfecting his refuge, engaged in tasks of excavation and assembly. He wielded the pickaxe skillfully, then mixed water into the mortar, gliding it until smooth in diligent ritual. Completing these labors, he stepped outside to wait as the mortar set, gazing upon the solitary pale moon. Without warning, Seon Ho felt compelled to address such injustice and cruelty, though heroics weren't in his nature, nor did he desire any noble quest. His purpose was one thing: pure survival. All that truly mattered was enduring and prevailing. Steeling his resolve, he turned, the icy grip of fear seizing him. There stood a skeletal creature, its bones rattling as it approached. Already simmering with anger, Sean Ho finally found a new object for his focus. An eruptive blast ensued, swallowing the surroundings in searing light. When our youth next awoke, he was covered head to toe in scratches, with no recollection of the chaos that had unfolded. But then, the memory of the skeletal monster returned to him. What puzzled him the most was how he managed to remain alive after being so close to the blast. But there was an explanation. The instant he laid eyes on the bone creeper, Sean Ho grasped at once it would self-destruct at any moment. Fleeing, he put distance between himself and danger. Even so, the explosion's shockwave caught up with him, leaving him battered into unconsciousness, though it didn't claim his life. Yet those few extra steps cost him dearly. Zion Ho found himself pierced on his right side, a constellation of sharp fragments embedded within. With what remained of his vigor, he summoned forth the status interface for assistance. His system statistics had waned from his weakened state. Still, the demise of the monster had granted him reward points. Soon, an intense headache began to cloud his senses with burden. Using every last bit of strength, he activated the portal once more. His first act upon arrival, addressing his injuries, painstakingly extracting shards of bone from the creature. The agony of removal was cruel. A sharp, overwhelming pain racked him at every moment of extraction. Fortune favored him as the ointment worked its magic, bringing an end to the bleeding. He reassessed his condition with fresh bandages. Eventually, Zhang Ho's body gave over to fatigue and he slipped into unconsciousness, having surpassed his limits for the day. With sunrise, our protagonist greeted the dawn. An ominous thought lingered that his days might well be numbered. His prime immediate fear was the state of his injuries. He hastily summoned the status window for answers. According to the interface, all signs pointed to stability, at least for now. He rose with a mind full of uncertainty, wondering deeply how that skeletal menace ever managed to track him down at all. To begin with, the wilderness stretches endlessly, so it is no great surprise for unsuspected beings to emerge unexpectedly from their seclusion. This quickly convinces him to dedicate more effort toward refining his perception attribute to sharpen his senses for detecting threats. The sole method for elevating these stats in this game is by investing stat points, which naturally are earned through the acts of hunting or the thrill of exploration. Another method for enhancing attributes is by wielding gear or armaments uniquely designed to strengthen the bearer. There's a snag, however. Sura fares poorly as a gaming experience, aggravated by a notorious difficulty level. Acquiring even the most basic stat items demands besting savage monsters ludicrously above one's current level. To claim a single weapon, one must battle through tormenting fiends. When vanquishing monsters, new skills sometimes became unlockable, especially in Hyel, where drops occurred if specific circumstances were met. The catch: not all abilities fit every player's profile. Now Shan Ho ponders if there exists a foolproof strategy to lay hands upon items that enhance his stats. He decides to revisit the narrative settings within the game and replay the records in his mind. Those stories transpire prior to the meteorites cascading onto Earth, implying that exploring such locations may reward adventurers with rare treasures before calamity descends. Still, this notion remains speculation, a theory for gamers. Are you following? Shan Ho is well aware that confronting tougher monsters is inevitable. He allocates the forthcoming hours to poring over historic details, stumbling upon 3 significant venues tied to background events: a derelict Russian vessel, the menacing hobgoblin, and finally the chilly tale of the Jerry Mountain orc incident, notably the quickest encounter of them all. Recorded footage reveals the orc is sighted on the 26th, so to reach it ahead of time he must set out on the 25th. Task fixed clearly before him, our protagonist checks his phone to find Mick Young calling deep into the night. Moments later, the friends find themselves nestled in the warmth of a cozy cafe. She gently inquires about how he's holding up, her curiosity piqued by his choice of a full-sleeve shirt amid the soaring summer heat. He's concealing his injuries, and it strikes him that this woman is even more perceptive than she lets on. Her guess is he's upset by what happened in the store, but Song-ho dismisses such worries. Her relief is evident, and she confides to him just how frightened she was in that moment. Shan-ho brings up a memory from last winter, recounting how a troublesome man created chaos with an illegal tow truck, then started picking fights with vulnerable individuals. In short, the man is a despicable character. Mikayong is taken aback, for she had no knowledge of these events, and our main character urges her earnestly to steer clear. Then, Seiho cuts to the chase to question why she had invited him out. With a sweet bravado, the young woman discloses softly in his ear that she, too, is awakened. Seong-ho is rather baffled as to why she would confide such an important secret to him. He continues to play along, feigning envy over missing such a fateful stroke of luck. She regrets her earlier dishonesty, but he reassures her every grievance is forgiven. As their conversation draws to a close, he rises to depart. Seong-ho radiates contentment at being trusted with such knowledge and confesses that her encouragement has truly lifted his spirits. Just before he steps away, he subtly hints at his newfound fascination with the survival life game, fully intending to become an expert. Upon returning to his residence, Shan-ho acknowledges the genuine joy he feels in meeting individuals of such noble character. He browses online stores and enthusiastically purchases sleek, high-tech drones as well as a rental car to aid in his travels. Afterward, he retreats to his bed, seeking rest and rejuvenation for the coming day. Indeed, a new day breaks. At first light, he gets to work fabricating tools to hunt orcs, meticulously crushing and refining ignition stones in his own base of operations. These stones demand careful handling, for a misplaced strike would ignite them unexpectedly. He proceeds with the luminous stone next. Though extracting them floods his vision with blinding brightness, their value compels him to continue. Once both stones have been powdered, he blends their dust. Thus his preparations for the quest near completion. He then incorporates sugar, gasoline, and natural solvents into his concoction. To finish, he adds a solidifying agent to the ignition stone mixture, allowing it to set. Thanks to his dimensional gate, which allows unfettered placement, he could organize his workstation with remarkable simplicity. Before departing, he packs every piece of gear into the rental car. Content with his acquisitions and confident that his luggage is well secured, Seiho sets off for Jury Mountain with the purpose of hunting orcs. Arriving at the Yungri campground's parking area before midnight, he spends the final minutes refining tactics and safeguarding his supplies. As soon as the clock chimes 12, he commences the hunt in earnest. 2 hours on, the rain intensifies, with the ensuing mist making it almost impossible to see far ahead. He cannot help but speculate as to where the orcs might emerge, since he has already scouted the area around the campground. He reasons that, unlike fantasy, real life gives no warning signs. That train of thought is abruptly shattered by a thunderous roar. Startled, he glances over his shoulder. In the place where the howl arose, a looming, shadow-cloaked entity draws near. Instantly, he recognizes it as an orc, a special type at that. This creature is a crimson orc variant, signifying a guaranteed skill drop. Kang-ho steadies his nerves, launching a firecracker. If his plan unfolds as intended, capturing this adversary is within reach. The approach he devised for combating orcs is straightforward. First, one must provoke the orc's aggression to command its attention. Once the orc chases the sparkle of the flare, lashing out with its massive axe, that instant becomes the perfect window. He takes aim, flings open the portal, and immediately triggers a flash grenade. The brilliance robs the orc of its sight for roughly 20 seconds, transforming the encounter into a contest against the limits of time. He moves to incapacitate the orc further by crippling its muscles, now weakened by the dazzling effect, drastically hindering the beast's responses. In a rage, the orc bellows and brings down its axe, desperately attempting to strike him down. But with lightning reflexes, our protagonist lowers himself just as the blade threatens him, successfully dodging the deadly blow. Next, with steady hands, he plunges his blade into the orc's foot. The instant steel meets skin, the beast bellows in agony, collapsing onto its knees. As their eyes meet, he swiftly jams the prepared flame canister into its gaping mouth. Barely has the canister passed the orc's lips when it detonates with force. Before long, the young man exults in triumph. But swiftly, the orc's knuckles crash into him, hurling him backward. Scrambling to his feet, it dawns on him he celebrated too soon, letting down his guard. He fixes his gaze upon the orc, its torso aflame and advancing, though, by all accounts, unlikely to persist much longer. The boy feels an ominous certainty that his moments are numbered, envisioning himself soon to be torn apart by the relentless orc. Just then, his system chimes, a surge to level 3 and a new bounty, 10 more points. With the boon, Will to Survive acquired, he rallies himself, muttering he can hardly take this anymore, contemplating the whereabouts of his loot. A faint glow envelops his wrist, drawing his eyes there where his reward, a watch called Perception, materializes. He exhales in relief. Endlessly searching for the coveted item in the pouring rain would have been an ordeal. He approaches the lifeless orc, mind clouded, head still fuming as he puzzles over his options for dealing with it. He muses that the giant orc affair remains under a strict blackout. He remains uncertain whether revealing such knowledge is wise, fearing the chaos it might summon. Recalling Myung's words that only those who have played the game awaken, he interprets this to hold singular significance. There must be thousands upon thousands of newly awakened souls. Should even a handful share the ruthless spirit of O and Hawk, the very fabric of laws and order could unravel to their selfish ambitions, spawning havoc. To compound his worries, leaving the slain orc unattended could mean, by tomorrow, it would rise as a bone creeper and terrorize the people. Suddenly, an idea blooms in his head. Why had he never realized he too might become a zombie? Awakening provides no immunity. One careless moment with the spores and he could join their ranks. Lost in indecision, he opens the portal, brooding over the handful who might still breathe when all is done. He understands that all endings require dignity. Our protagonist starts to dig a resting place for the vanquished orc, though fatigue soon gnaws at him, and he doubts he can drag the creature over. Yet, his nascent will to survive stirs with exhaustion, fueling his strength to swiftly complete the grave. Thus compelled, the spirited youth hurries to finish the task. He has naught but haste to guide him now. With gratitude for his newfound resilience, he lifts the orc into its earthen bed. Upon finishing, a portal opens anew, and he emerges within the confines of a car on the move. Recovery from the portal's aftermath is never brief. His body must mend before any routine can resume. At dawn, curiosity prickles. Can the morning weather be so remarkable? According to his strategy, by now he ought to have established a line of defense. He checks his device, speculating whether every trace of the red orc has been erased. No great deeds today, he decides. Now is not his moment, so he shifts his attention to parcels that arrived with the first light. He finds inside the box every weapon he'll require, though, at present, he's fit to use only that which mirrors an Indian war club. Yet some things from the shipment have not arrived. Reaching for a note, he reads that a portion of his order contained forbidden items and thus couldn't clear customs. While he becomes absorbed by the weapons before him, the rumble of another delivery van approaches, prompting him to call out loudly, instructing them to leave the package at his door. A decisive knock at the door makes him question why the delivery driver ignored his request. He tries giving his instructions once again, then opens the gate, only to discover it isn't the delivery man at all. Mikong stands there, sharing that it's been ages since they last met and she wants to talk to him about something. A bag of food hangs from her hand as she wonders if he'd care to join her for some rabaki. Now, only 24 days stand between them and the world's end. Our protagonist is barely able to grasp that Mikayong is actually here, standing in his home. He's visibly unsettled, his face flushed with embarrassment. After she plates up the meal, she urges him to eat before it cools, and he complies. Once they finish, he finally inquires about the subject she wished to discuss. Directly addressing the matter, she references his earlier interest in Sura and the important information she hopes to go over. This conversation, however, is not at all what he had hoped it would be. Secretly, he'd imagined she might propose a romantic connection, but he steadies his mind, reasoning that now, in these grim times, holy company and planning apocalyptic affairs is his safest path. Without delay, she begins clearing away the remains of their meal as he sets about making further preparations. He fetches his computer and comes clean about his awakening, knowing it's better she hears from him directly. He launches into an explanation of the metallic death plague and warns her that wandering in groups exceeding 6 merely provokes the zombies. Grasping this revelation is vital to making it through alive. In truth, it is the most crucial ability one can cultivate at present. The entire premise centers on survival. He's set to elaborate further, but she interrupts, questioning him about Owen Hawke's statements. Why won't Kimbaplover disclose information despite harsh criticism? He can offer no concrete explanation, so he invites her to speculate herself. Her opinion is that everyone holds reasons of their own, and given the situation, their actions make sense. After this, he shares that he refused an invitation to join, which leads her to inquire about his motivation for turning it down. Bringing forth his phone, he proceeds to show her exactly why. There's a recording in which they discuss abducting a girl, casting her as a challenge. This disturbs him greatly. Turning to Mikong, he says, "When the end comes, all truths will be unveiled." The genuine nature of people. Protectively, he cautions her not to trust in others, but she surprises him with an unexpected offer, suggesting, "Should we not join forces together?" He tightens his hand into a fist, caught between words, unable to respond at once. Aiming to reach level 10 and unlock the shop before finishing the tutorial forms one of his key objectives, and therein lies the issue. Within Sola's rules, the rank of monsters that reappear adapts to the adventurer's levels. If she comes along with him, the likelihood is she would face a most dreadful fate. He lets out a nervous chuckle, idly musing for 35 minutes about what her reaction would be if he transformed into a zombie. Reassuring him, she claims things will be alright and demonstrates her ability by instantly appearing at his dining table. She shows off her gift, she calls it Blink, and boasts she wouldn't need much more than to evade him if he ever tried to bite her. Astonished by her talent, he cautions her against displaying it for just anyone, but she faithfully replies that she trusts him. She beams, proposing that unless they both end up as zombies, they'll make an impressive team. Sometime after, as he lingers near the trees, his thoughts wander to how effortlessly he managed to install the fences. First, he drove sturdy posts deep into the earth as anchors, spiraled barbed wire around them, and secured everything in place. Then he introduced infrared sensors to a few locations. The rest of the task soon concluded. Admiring his completed handiwork, he congratulates himself, convinced the effort should at minimum grant him a dexterity point. Once Zhang Ho fills in the last of the mortar, shaping a wall for defense, he resolves to get to work delivering packages. After some time, he's moved all the boxes at last. He evaluates his next step, but a sudden chill runs through him and he can't help but sneeze. This prompts him to realize the alternate world will prove frigid, and soon he'll seek refuge here, so it's necessary to devise protections against the cold. Examining the cave's entry, our hero notes a mere curtain won't suffice and resolves to construct a proper gate. Each finished task only seems to reveal new items on his growing to-do list. Later, he makes a stop by a woodworking shop to produce and purchase assorted supplies. As he makes his return, he checks out the places he plans to confiscate goods from during the 5 hours before the metallic plague of death erupts. While he outlines his targets, he's unexpectedly interrupted by Hayoung Jun Hayoung, whom he hasn't seen for quite some time. This acquaintance, now operating a gym, is divorced and caring for his little daughter. Studying the man's demeanor, our protagonist senses stress. Hayoung seems indifferent but takes notice of his physique seeming to recover. When he asks what's troubling him, Hayoung remarks that the answer should be fairly plain. The gloom in him comes from the forthcoming end of the world. The protagonist finds it striking that he's in on the secret too, and Hung, in turn, questions if the protagonist shares his belief about it. Initially, Hung doubted the rumors, until he witnessed his own friend hovering above the ground with newfound abilities. The protagonist feigns ignorance about awakening powers, and the gym owner also laments sorrowfully that he hasn't awakened either. Currently, that friend of his is headed toward the local TV studio, trying to earn some profit from his situation. The gym director gestures for him to take a seat, and our protagonist suspects news of awakenings will soon circulate. He skillfully steers the discussion toward some strange recent events. The notorious UIO gunfight, Seong Ho is in disbelief since he'd missed the morning broadcasts. He's urged to turn on the news, but the story quickly disappears. Censorship has now gripped the press. Hayoung shares the latest updates, revealing that attempts are being made to mask the incident by blaming a deserter for the shooting. The place where the confrontation unfolded is now sealed off from citizens, accessible only to military and police forces. Our young man abruptly rises, makes up an excuse, and dashes away. Upon returning home, he recalls how another shootout erupted just after the orc event. These circumstances leave him suspicious, believing the government's response exposes their involvement. He accesses a document on his computer, then selects and begins playing a video. The realization that many people already knew the exact schedule of the precursor phenomenon catches him off guard. Though he'd managed to eliminate the orc, the shootout nonetheless happened right on cue. Wrestling with his thoughts, he ponders the possibility that someone leaked word to the authorities early, prompting the enactment of plans before the first precursor even occurred. He considers that perhaps no one came forward because they lack traits suited for aggression. Though he doesn't know their identity, he feels certain there's someone powerful behind the scenes guiding the government. Sean Ho muses about their possible identity. His investigation narrowed it to 3 old-timers. After careful deliberation, he dismisses the creator. Since the machinations from the game are manifesting in real life, he suspects the game's creators of villainous motivations. If these antagonists were supported by the administration, they would have never allowed the orcs' demise. He sketches out the likenesses of the top 3 people under suspicion. He considers whether survivor number 1 could be involved. If his assumptions are correct, then there's no need to relay this intelligence to officials himself. Leaning back in his chair, he wonders if he ever truly understood survivor number 1. A pang of longing for his former comrades tugs at him, prompting him to have faith in them for the time being. Yet even sharing what he knows wouldn't prevent the looming disaster, motivating him to hold back for the moment. 2 days onward, he completes installing his new door, with the pantry now in order as well. The construction of his first refuge finished, he contemplates adding a couple of logistic trays and drilling through the wall, though space turns out to be tighter than he had imagined. Waterproofing for the basement is complete and he's been laboring on it gradually. He turns away, assuring himself that clarity will come once everything finishes being restored. For the next stage, a crucial endeavor awaits, charting the territory via drone over a span of 39 minutes. Engaged in this work, donning his VR equipment and guiding the airborne device, he spots the shelter at the center point and sets out to examine the surroundings. Thanks to the drone, he discerns snowfields extending northwestward and the presence of a southern sea. Noticing the sea is free from monsters and teeming with potential catches, he decides to lay out traps there for fishing. He surveys the valley, hoping to understand the environment that encircles his refuge. Then he comes upon the site where he had hidden the owlbear's body, only to discover it has vanished. He has a fleeting suspicion that perhaps the furry giant devoured it. However, he withholds judgment, seeing multitudes of footprints, especially those reminiscent of orcs, clustering there, which heightens the mystery. Carefully, he carries out a measurement between the valley and the refuge, estimating it to be about 1 unit. 5 kilometers, far closer than he thought, put the shelter in graver peril than his earlier feelings suggested. Aware that goblins lurk nearby, he calls the drone back to the shelter, unable to gamble with losing such a precious tool. With the drone's images, he sketches a detailed map and catalogs the types of beasts within the woods. Armed with these findings, his next task is to personally scout each marked area. He sets out towards the nearest wetland, intent on discovering if the land ruins itself to farming or offers hope. Out of the blue, his infrared alarm blares. He hurries outside, instantly recognizing goblin traces stamped in the soil. He'd already been turning over such possibilities in his mind, so this crisis delivers an unexpected stroke of fortune. He suspects that his heightened senses, recently bolstered, grant him such clarity that even the faintest whisper seems amplified. Thanks to this, he catches sight of some goblins moving stealthily without revealing his own position. Luck hands him an ideal vantage, and he draws his spear and an arrow, hurling them with precision at the nearest goblin's skull. The stricken goblin collapses, and at once the others surge towards him, yet he dispatches them with surprising ease, ending their threat swiftly. 4 goblins fall before his skill and resolve, and soon he turns his sights to hunt down the final 4. They manage to surround him, but he withdraws something mysterious from his pocket. Immediately the goblins crumble to their knees. Kneeling, defenseless, the goblins offer no resistance as our protagonist, armed with his knife, dispatches them one by one. Cleverly exploiting their fatigue, he seizes victory in a manner that amazes even himself with its efficiency. A mere 21 days now are all that remain before the apocalyptic end draws near. While toiling away, digging into the earth, he is overtaken by exhaustion, only for his special trait to flare, rejuvenating his body with newfound vigor. It dawns on him that perhaps, after all, this ability holds real and valuable potential. Not long after having finished interring the goblin corpses, he inspects the spoils of his struggle. Foremost, the guaca fruit, which restores his waning strength with its restorative properties. Amid abundant vegetable oil in the bounty, he suspects crops may grow close by. Inspecting the pouch on the goblin leader, he finds a surprise, a living azure toad. Its hue bewilders him, making him ponder the goblin's preference for live prey over dead. Abruptly, the toad emits a telltale scent and his suspicions constellate. It is not a creature for food, but the source of the goblin's paralyzing poison. Without delay, he resolves to nurture this little toad, whatever it might cost him. Its plucky appearance charms him, but more than that, harvesting its toxic gift unlocks the prospect of fortifying his body, gradually growing resistance to its venom's grasp. Once in hand, such paralysis poison will make future hunts far more manageable. Naming the toad Jodok, he eagerly sets about caring for it, already planning sumptuous meals for this newfound companion. Soon, his internal system alerts him. The toad has truly become his to keep. He muses, wondering if he stumbled upon reality's own hidden feature or clever mechanism. With that, he spirals into cycles of deep contemplation, questioning and probing every angle of this unfolding story. Afterward, the young protagonist begins to wander, eventually uncovering a portal between realms. With this gateway, he repeatedly journeys through it, and ultimately he finishes reorganizing everything. Following this, he wastes no time in examining nearby areas and stumbles upon a spring he had overlooked while observing via drone. Peering into the waters, he discerns that it's merely regular water, carrying no unusual threat. He is astonished to discover a hidden shelter close to where he's staying, and just behind the bubbling spring, he comes across a flourishing guaca tree and some buds rich in vegetable oil. Our protagonist gathers the guaca fruit and collects a decent supply of those valuable oil buds. To ensure he never loses track of this location, he marks the trees along each path and then begins his journey homeward. Upon returning to his flat, he attends to the needs of his newly acquired companion, Jodok. For now, he keeps his pet safely in his second-floor apartment, as abandoning Jodok in the hideout would mean certain doom. Besides nurturing his pet, further responsibilities call him. What ended up taking most of his time was preparing the healing salve, but he produced far more than necessary. He's unsure what to do with the excess, and giving any to Mikong is out of the question, as she also possesses awakened powers. Thus, Hung becomes his choice. Visiting Haiyang's residence, he finds him sipping a nutritious drink, and in this moment our hero presents the ointment, prompting a puzzled curiosity about its nature. He clarifies that he unintentionally made too large a batch of salve, which is simply intended for treating wounds. After about 43 minutes, Haiyang teases, asking if he's entering sales, which our hero denies with a smile. Nevertheless, Haiyang expresses his appreciation both for the ointment and for being updated about Sura, though our hero responds with thanks for learning about the shooting incident. Then Xiang Ho comments on how unnaturally silent the gym feels, and his friend mentions that, after the outspoken individual shared his knowledge, everyone left to deliberate and strategize. As a result, they're now planning to establish a headquarters here. Our protagonist cautions that gathering a large group signals increased risk, yet Hung refuses to forsake his companions, bound by unwavering loyalty. Soon, Haiyang probes what Xiang Ho intends next, but he dodges the matter. Then a shriek abruptly breaks the air, and Ho recognizes its echoed familiarity. Looking down from the building, he spots Mikong collapsed on the ground. Together, both hurry over, filled with concern about what transpired. She recounts that she suffered an attack, with no ability to identify her assailant. Immediately, Haiyang rushes outside to survey the premises, disregarding our protagonist's plea for him to wait. Meanwhile, our young man stays with Mikhayo Yuang as she describes her sudden loss of vision, overwhelmed and unable to recollect details. This chilling revelation sends a cold pang through our hero. He recognizes the situation and insists that if she comes close to such an event again, she must instantly use her blink ability since their foes are advancing. He also promises to soon provide her with a kit for self-protection, strongly urging her to stay wary from this point forward. Only 20 days remain until calamity arrives. There is a well-known meme from earlier times. When 5 gather together, one is almost certain to contribute nothing. Mischief makers are found in every corner of the globe, but in Sura, their presence is even more pronounced. Measures to counter meddling exist in Sura, with the developers responding to complaints, though they hardly ever apprehend the troublemakers. In this world, trollers blend into parties under the guise of allies only to later entice their comrades into dens teeming with monsters, resulting in devastation for all involved. With a veneer of generosity, they draw in novices, only to betray and rob them eventually. Troublemakers have employed countless tactics to turn groups against one another. Such players hastened the downfall of a game that was already struggling, bringing it to its knees within a single year. Occasionally, membership dwindled to 4, after Shan Ho's group took it upon themselves to rid the realm of lingering trollers. Our young protagonist catches himself on a tangent, so he gathers his thoughts and succinctly sums up his findings to this point. After the UIO incident, communities of Awakeners merged into a single force. Now they not only exchange knowledge, but also concoct designs of their own. His explanation halts abruptly. To his surprise, people are now distributing his recordings too. Wandering deeper through the site, the hero uncovers his companion Dajisim's true nature as a troller. He's left speechless on encountering a thumbnail from Daju, proclaiming a tale of being supported by Kimbupja. Now Ho questions whether Daju is baiting others with skillfully altered footage. Strangely amused, he even applauds Daju as praise rains down for the latter's ingenuity. He stretches languidly, resolving to devote himself to more rigorous training to better counteract such individuals. For 13 successive days, whenever respite allowed, our leading character devoured tutorials about arms handling and practical techniques for actual conflicts, courtesy of a survivalist's online channel. During these days, he also witnessed the threats posed by monsters, not sparing even their places of concealment. There too lay various strategies and implements devised without regard for the threatening wire disease. So, after nearly 2 weeks of practice, Seeing Ho is finally determined to select a primary weapon, one effective even if that strange malady emerges and suitable against both adversaries and beasts. He rummages through his bag, unearthing an Indian war club, a wooden slingshot, clay beads of ochre, and a stone axe he crafted himself, yet none truly satisfy his rigorous requirements. At first, he elects to try the slingshot for its versatile potential, though he doubts the questionable might of the ochre beads. Next, he moves on to the Indian War Club, weighing its merits. He muses that if the existence of the wire disease is considered an established fact, then reassurance follows. The simplest way to fell a zombie is by obliterating the spore cluster within their skull with a heavy, blunt force. It comes to him that, upon reaching level 10, the very first item he aspired to acquire was a bluntarm tool, an ebony club, making the improvement of his skills with such weaponry all the more vital for his path. But now, the boy is pondering whether the Indian War Club is equally effective against humans. He thinks its usefulness remains uncertain, since facing an awakened psychic with it would be quite a challenge for him. He remembers that in this life meant for survival, taking down a fellow person awards 50 points. The murderer system, enforcing duels with nearby players marked as killers, restricted random slaying, even if some people, likely undeterred by penalties, would dispose of others just to collect extra points. Meanwhile, he demolishes the practice target using his Indian War Club. He resolves to avoid such ruthless players until his skills and items are fully gathered. After rigorous training, our protagonist wipes his brow and starts plotting to break down the store completely, but pauses abruptly upon hearing a wolf's howl echo from close by. A sense of alarm hits him, and he wonders if a wolf was hurt somewhere near his secret spot. Eventually, Seon Ho discovers the wolf far larger than the ordinary kind. He could practically ride astride the beast. The system registers its name as the Gray Wolf. On closer inspection, however, it's clear the creature is no longer breathing. He speculates whether it lost its way and wandered here or ended up here after a fight. Hoping for clues, our protagonist proceeds to inspect the animal's wounds. Suddenly and without warning, a young cub bumps into his back. Seong Ho realizes this fallen wolf is the mother to the small one, who quickly places itself between its mother and Seong Ho, as if to shield her. He grows uncertain, knowing that using force to part the young wolf from its mother is not an option. Picking up a shovel, he opts to bury the adult wolf right away. As he starts digging, he thinks that if the creature happened to be a monster, it might rise again as a bone creeper. And should it not be, its body might end up luring yet more supernatural beasts. When the grave is finished after a while, the cub slumbers curled up against its mother, prompting a flood of memories in our hero. He reminisces about his younger days and Mongshai, the dog he once raised as a boy. Then carefully, he lifts the cub and gently explains that its mother will be resting here now. He goes on to assure it that visits to its mother's resting place can happen any time, for he intends to create a little canal for it in the door of his hideout. Soon after, Seon Ho offers the cub a slice of meat, vowing that hunger will never haunt it while it grows up. He requests a favor in exchange: its remarkable sense of smell. Upon asking if the cub will help, the little wolf responds with a pleased and gentle sound. Then, as he softly pats its head, he gives it the name Dingo. The system's prompt appears. He has successfully established communication with the gray wolf, and from here onward this gray wolf Dingo is considered his companion. Thus, the countdown unfolds. Only 19 days are left before the apocalypse descends. During this stretch, Zion Ho dedicates himself to guiding Dingo. He asks it to repeat the tasks from earlier. Upon command, Dingo obediently places its paw onto his palm. The wolf faithfully dashes at his signal, sits, reclines, and holds still, accomplishing each order delivered by its teacher. Finally, he launches a hearty bone high into the sky, and Dingo makes a nimble jump, catching it in one swift move. This quick mastery fills our hero with contentment as he reflects on how quickly Dingo learns, perhaps the result of being a creature from another world. He marvels inwardly at Dingo's gift for sensing and considers this little wolf a symbol of luck and serendipity. He affectionately tends to his charming sidekick, planting a small kiss. Just as he is about to speak, his phone suddenly begins to ring. When Sion Ho picks up his phone, he notices a message from Haiyang, who proposes that he look up levitation online. Afterward, our protagonist stumbles upon an article about someone dubbed the first superhuman, a figure who prophesies that zombies and monstrous beings will soon emerge, bringing calamity in their wake. This very article has now claimed the top rank. In the commentaries, skepticism abounds. Most believe the broadcasting network created this purely to boost their viewership statistics. He observes that many are unaware of different eras, yet the awakened ones in the comment threads display evident anxiety. He finds himself amused by those who fret when scant details are provided, and equally by those who get indignant when their exclusive knowledge becomes common chatter. He then begins to ponder how official authorities might respond. He is mindful of demonstrations about shock and supernatural powers, but steels himself, resolving not to become entangled in such affairs, while hinting that the administration will truly intervene after the forthcoming sign, the Hobgoblin incident. Shangho wastes no time. Turning to Dingo, he declares that today marks the beginning of their expedition. In his heart, he knows only deep preparations will suffice, and Dingo seems thrilled by the prospect. In time, they step through to the portal realm, and Seeing Ho considers his choice to delve into interdimensional journeys with Dingo. To start, he lets Dingo sniff a tiny pouch and commands him to search for it. The initial motive for these forays is to gear up for the imminent Hobgoblin crisis, as he must ensure Dingo can thoroughly lock onto goblin scents. Meanwhile, Dingo gives a lively bark from amidst the shrubs. He has traced the piece of flesh, and our protagonist is quietly pleased that the wolf succeeded based on a mere faint aroma. His second reason is to gauge Dingo's composure during active combat and ability to heed instructions. At his signal, the wolf instantly charges ahead, executing his role with exacting agility. Dingo chases down a hare across the green sward, prompting words of praise from his master. The third aim behind these explorations is to verify whether hunting is feasible in this alternative realm. Xiang Ho draws near to assess Dingo's quarry, noting the rabbit's fierce talons and impressive dimensions. After the hunt, the youth and his loyal wolf venture ever deeper into the unknown. As they move forward, he speculates how Dingo's cognitive abilities would translate into statistics. He resolves to travel toward the valley and confirm this assessment personally. Just then, a system notification appears, declaring that Dingo's health has increased by a single point. Recollecting that, as Kimbafo, his own health once measured at 170, our hero marvels at how swiftly Dingo develops. Abruptly, Dingo begins coughing, and his companion quickly hurries over to offer water. Gently, he reminds his four-legged friend not to wander into the woods alone. While Dingo drinks, the boy notices a sizable green pepper plant and muses whether Dingo ate from it. The system identifies it as bull pepper. Seong Ho delights in stumbling across this forest treat and lavishes more praise on Dingo, promising no shortage of snacks in the near future. He burrows into the earth to unearth the bulper crop. Afterward, they embark on the last hunt of the season. The two of them perch atop stones on the banks of a stream. This instance, Dingo fails to pick up any odd scents or sense any presence nearby. Within himself, the lad thinks that red trout aren't formidable foes nor do they yield rewards, but he's convinced this is a vital lesson for young Dingo to gain important experience. Once the red trout are hunted, our lead decides to wrap up preparations for stage 2 and afterward head home. The next morning dawns to reveal his entire restaurant reduced to rubble. The demolition company's supervisor tells our protagonist to call them within 3 days if any issues arise with repairs. He expresses heartfelt gratitude to the supervisor for beginning work so early at dawn. Drawing a deep breath, melancholy washes over him at the sight of the destruction, yet he accepts its necessity. Entering the building, Se-ho wonders if post-apocalypse, looters who don't become zombies will flock to empty stores. He confides that, in their place, he likely wouldn't act any differently and therefore feels he can't criticize them. While he sweeps the remains, Hung arrives, silent behind him, quietly surveying the bare room. Ha-young remarks that he, too, has kept only the very necessary pieces of equipment. When the young man voices his curiosity about Ha-young's sudden appearance, Ha-young irritably flicks Zhang Ho on the forehead, upset that he'd vanished the day before without word. Now, Hong admits he's simply come to ensure Shang-ho still survived. Meanwhile, Dingo fixes Ha-young with an icy stare. Ha-young muses as to whether Zhang Ho always had such a dog but hears that the previous pet is long gone. He clarifies that this one is new, prompting Hung to comment on the wolf's charm. Then Zion Ho repeats his question about the visit, prompting the same reply from Ha-young that he wished to check on him. Finding that answer unconvincing, our lead is met with a deeper explanation as Ha-young supplies another motive for his call. Ha-young admits concern but announces he has uncovered who orchestrated the incident involving Mikhail Yuang. He also shares that just 17 days are left before the beginning of the apocalypse. Taking a seat beside Ha-young, Zion Ho hears that the gathering hosted by Kim Kaol-jun, notorious for never removing his hat, is designed to put Mikhail in peril. Ha-young further adds that the tow truck, disliked by our hero, partners with that crew as well. He gestures to the fronting mountains, questioning if the plot near the base, where redevelopment ended, is the location of the group's headquarters. Despite these details, curiosity lingers as to how Hung pieced it all together. Hung simply says the clues fell perfectly into place. He explains that Han Jinong, gifted with levitation, recently showed up on a mainstream program where Hong approached him to inquire directly. Han Jin confessed he'd associated with Cha Jun's gathering in the past, but found every member thoroughly disagreeable. Therefore, Han Jin chose not to stay with them since their personalities clashed badly. After Mikhail's ordeal, all the female attendees departed, and when pressed about the cause, the women only cited having received invitations to other awakened crews. Ha-young seeks Se-ho's perspective, and he replies that, unlike Mikhang, the other women likely got duped when they joined the fold. Hung suddenly divulges that the group is presently dwindled to 4 people counting himself. This news jolts our protagonist, who recalls just days prior there were 20 members. Ha-young refrains from expanding further, but he is now aware there are but 2 awakeners left in their group. Shang-ho finds it hard to grasp, knowing they'd lent so much help even to those who have since gone. But Ha-young calmly asserts that such selfishness is the natural way of life, those individuals only cared for their own interests. Beyond that, Ha-young confides his concern for little Jian and contemplates whether to speak with his former wife. Our young hero remains impassive, fully aware their circumstances differ, wishing only for reassurance that his thoughts are valid. There is something that lingers within his thoughts, and he wishes to pose a question to Hung. Our main character quietly ponders, if the end times truly begin and Ha-young finds himself threatened by others, what would become of him? Before Xiang-ho finds his words, Ha-young interrupts, declaring that he would not hesitate for a moment to fight back. Ha-young explains that as a personal code he avoids harming anyone, yet if all order collapsed he'd have no other option. In such bleak circumstances, he claims, malice would have no place left to thrive. Curious, Ha-young wonders aloud why Xiang-ho has brought up such a topic, suspecting it is out of character for him. However, the young man dodges the inquiry, and at that moment, a cry for aid interrupts them. The plea crackles from the hero's cell phone speaker. Hung speculates that perhaps the sound comes from a lost child, yet Seeing Ho checks his map and entrusts Dingo to Haiyang for safekeeping. Comes from a lost meanwhile, finds yet herself. Seeing Ho checks his map and cornered by entrusts troublemakers and Dingo to Haiyang for seems to have signaled for safekeeping assistance. Ainin, the enforcer towing truck, and Hawk jeer at her predicament, demanding that Mikhayo Yuang make her way down to them. In defiance, Mikhayo Yuang stands boldly atop the building's edge, exclaiming that she already declined, yet they refuse to leave her alone. With frustration, she asks for an explanation for their relentless actions, and urges her to give it another thought, while Kim Xiao and Ma Zhang assert authority, insisting on handling the matter themselves, reminding her that they stand in a redevelopment zone where no help will arrive. Kim Chai advises her not to exhaust herself, mentioning that they all possess special abilities, then begins to count down. At this moment, our protagonist readies his arms, carefully concealed in a nearby alleyway. As Kim Chai counts to 2, he swings Kim Call, and on the third count, Kim Chayal is hit unexpectedly. A wave of confusion sweeps through the group as they scramble to identify their mysterious assailant. In a sudden move, the protagonist steps into view, helmeted and bold, considering whether his identity should remain secret. Brandishing the Indian War Club, Seeing Ho lands a strong blow, swiftly moving to engage another adversary next. His foe radiates shadows, giving rise to our protagonist's suspicion of a trait that distorts sight, yet Zan Ho succeeds in striking him all the same. Now short of breath, he catches sight of Mikhayon, who urgently cautions him to remain vigilant. Turning quickly, he finds Kim Shiel charging with a bat which crashes into his helmet, leaving visible damage. Zion Ho reels from the battering, unsettled by the sheer force of the hit, while Kim Chai realizes his true identity. Nevertheless, our youth is consumed by thought, understanding for the first time in the span of only 57 minutes that Kim Chai's aggressive ability is already formidable. Kim Chai, full of enmity, makes a threatening vow towards our protagonist. His allies snap to attention, determined to give their utmost effort in spite of not having awakened powers. An lunges towards our main character, electricity coursing around him as he taunts. Xiang Ho contemplates whether to counter him with the elusive dimensional gate. At that crucial instant when Anin prepares to attack, Dingo rushes in and clamps onto Anin's arm. Haiyang emerges from the shadows, asking if such chaos can truly occur under the sun, urging the troublemakers to leave peaceably and declaring his intent to call Wonder 12. Disheartened, the enemies pull away. Hung remarks that although they act haughtily, power does not lie with them. At that, Mikhayon swiftly descends and, ever concerned, takes hold of the protagonist's head to assess his well-being. She observes the fracture in his helmet, prompting Haiyang to kindly offer our young man a ride on his back. Watching concern flicker across their faces, Xiang Ho's mind wanders back to memories of his fellow teammates from the old game. Upon Mikhong's suggestion that he should seek medical attention, our main character turns aside, assuring them with stubborn insistence that he is all right. He proceeds to ask Haiyang if Mikhong might join their party. Haiyang answers it is perfectly fine unless Mikhayon objects, and she agrees warmly and with enthusiasm. Claiming he has various affairs to handle, the hero takes his leave, leaving Haiyang and Mikhayon puzzled over his peculiar behavior. Back home, our protagonist centers himself, calming his feelings and mapping out the subsequent phase of his preparations. He knows he had to leave so suddenly, yet when he caught sight of Haiyang and Mikhayon together, he felt an unexpected trust blossoming, as though his secret might one day be safe with them. But the path ahead is already decided. To truly seize the dimensional gate, our boy needs to climb levels swiftly and concentrate on honing skills and gathering supplies. After his battle with the Mountain Gang, the mantra of conquering foes with sheer item strength resonates even louder in his mind. He comes to understand that staying on his current preparation track will soon create a gap of 3 or more levels, which not only strengthens the monsters nearby as they respawn, but also makes working with his 2 friends more difficult. He keeps toiling until he has finished setting up a wood stove in his refuge, sure that this simple comfort will grant him restful nights. Nearby, Dingo too finds contentment, curling up beside the new stove for a peaceful sleep. With just a handful of installations remaining, the hero anticipates that, once they arrive, his initial creation of a home base will be practically done. Resolute, he makes up his mind to work through the night, Thus, only 16 days stand between him and the coming apocalypse. A television anchor brings the latest developments on the previously cited asteroid to the audience. The segment explains that, as per an HSA release, Yun Jambai has reached the heart of the solar system. The HSA's close evaluation reveals that Jupiter's gravity has fractured the meteorite into two distinct pieces. As a precaution, the meteorite observation chief, Thomas Chandler, offers public reassurance, stating that the new fragments, Yun Jambai Alpha and Beta, pose no threat to Earth. Even so, Seong Ho recalls that on day 5 before the world changed, Yun Jambai Beta was in fact the first to crash down. It fell close to a Russian vessel at sea, unleashing a tidal wave that drove the ship ashore at Gamcheon port, marking the moment when zombies first plagued Korea. The broadcaster moves forward, now delivering updates on the shooting incident in Uido. President Jang Wake has remained within his residence for an entire week, which has led opposition leaders to collectively release a statement agreeing to convene a hearing. Whispers tie this to speculation about awakeners and the soon-to-arrive catastrophe. Hearing this, our hero concedes inwardly that doomsday is at hand. He muses that renewed press scrutiny is a welcome change, and guesses it may now prove tougher for awakeners to break the law unnoticed. He next decides to browse his laptop for how the online community is taking the big news. As our main character scrolls through the flood of comments, he discovers that people have voiced passionate views regarding the current events. By chance, his eyes catch a remark by someone called My Dream, making him ponder whether this user had been present all this time. My Dream was known among players as someone welcoming to newcomers. Seon Ho's friends had teamed up with him before. My Dream dreamed of constructing a mighty bunker, and had our hero lacked a portal, he might have found himself tempted to join that pursuit. He resolves to refrain from signing any agreement unless his seasoned allies are on board with My Dream, yet he bookmarks the relevant comment for the future. Shutting his laptop, the protagonist readies himself to embark on the creation of his second haven. The next morning, Seon Ho is positioned in front of his fortress, musing that a person can indeed stay awake 2 nights back to back. Tiredness weighs heavily on him, but taking in the completed structure fills him with vigor. Now is the moment to master the use of solar-powered electricity. In essence, there are a few essential wiring processes needed to let him use this power for his gadgets. To his delight, as he places his phone to charge, everything functions as it should. He raises his hands in joy, proclaiming he has now established a true foothold for survival in this realm. It's been ages since he experienced such a surge of satisfaction. Just yesterday, he also gathered glowstones and firestones, and deeper in the earth discovered a remarkable mineral called emeris, renowned for being tougher and keener than obsidian. Though it serves no purpose at present, he concludes it's preferable to have it than go without. He plans to install LED lamps at a later time, but before sleep can call him, he must sort the provisions kept downstairs. Out of nowhere, a fierce uproar from Dingo catches his focus. Dashing outside, Seong Ho sees Dingo staring down ravaged wolves, a monster he remembers from Sura. He is puzzled since these beasts normally inhabit mountainous peaks, yet here they are. Watching the rage in Dingo's demeanor, it occurs to our protagonist these animals could be the very ones responsible for Dingo's mother's death. He attempts to soothe Dingo, yet he's fully aware he couldn't overcome all these wolves at this point. Should he attempt to reach for a stronger weapon, he risks leaving himself wide open for attack, a mistake that could end disastrously. With that in mind, our hero chooses to direct his attention to frightening off the alpha, having learned that the rest will likely follow its lead. He studies the ultra-cautious manners of the pack, noting that every wolf waits for the alpha's move before acting. Then, he contemplates whether these creatures possess the ability to cooperate in launching an attack. Our protagonist also takes note of their extraordinary sensitivity to different odors. Luckily, Sean Ho carries pepper spray. If he manages to aim it at the alpha, he might be able to chase the predator from his sanctuary. As he weighs the danger of acting too slowly, nervous sweat starts to bead upon his skin. He considers whether he might be able to divert its attention long enough to hit it with the spray. In a flash, inspiration strikes and he feels confident it could succeed. Steeled by a resolve to protect the refuge he crafted himself, our young protagonist prepares for action. Without delay, he hurls a knife toward the Alpha, but the beast evades skillfully. Then, as the Alpha lunges at him, Shang-Ho swiftly summons the portal and, capitalizing on the moment, douses the creature with spray. The Alpha is unsettled, and our main character seizes the opportunity to drive his blade into its eye. The wolf pack withdraws. Seated, our protagonist breathes, recognizing how narrowly he survived. Dingo makes his way to offer comfort, and Zhang Ho fondly pats Dingo, expressing thanks. He assures Dingo that he'll seek justice for his mother when the time is right. Thus, only 15 days remain before the end unfolds. Once the preparation of the basement was completed, Zhang Ho headed to both the hardware and pharmacy stores, intent on acquiring essential defense equipment. By this point, our bro had not slept in 68 hours, and the skirmish with the wolves only compounded his exhaustion. Nevertheless, XO suspect's luck may have favored him in that last clash. Had the wolves been werewolves instead, things would have gone south real fast for him. He wonders whether he let his guard down, focusing only on threats near him, without factoring in the various possibilities that might arise unexpectedly. Finding himself with limited options, Zhang Ho contemplates enlarging the domain and constructing a sturdier haven. The readings from his drone align with this vision. Hungjun welcomes him from the distance, while Seon Ho, lost in contemplation, muses that with his new strategies he might secure ample land for farming and storage. Once his secondary defenses are secured, his next target will be implementing Bluetooth beacons to broaden their communications. His companion repeatedly calls his name and finally snaps him to attention, inquiring how he's occupying himself after an hour and 4 minutes here. Keeping things easy, Xiang Ho shares he just wants to buy supplies. Jim Bro supposes he's picking up some weapons, a curious leap, especially since they're right outside a hardware shop. Hyung Jun admits he's not the one interested after all, explaining it's actually this striking woman who wants them. She is one of the members of their group. After making his purchases, Xiang Ho discovers that his friend ran into her and has been trying fruitlessly to persuade her away from buying weapons. But the young woman is unwavering in her intent. Zion Ho decides it might be wise to hand her the summary he put together, but even after he shows it to her, she isn't convinced in the slightest. She fixes him with a glacial stare, unsettling him enough that he points it out aloud. Unexpectedly, she recounts that he owns the Teabaki restaurant, which he affirms. She is thoroughly amazed by how different he seems both in looks and demeanor. Xiang Ho guesses she finds his manner unfriendly and apologizes, yet instead she simply digs out her wallet and presents him with a card. This clever woman is Jo Swang, remarkably enough, a physician. Intelligent and attractive, a rare combination. Now that he knows she's a doctor, Xiang Ho outlines the rules for her just as he did before with Hung Jun and Mikayong. The doctor simply decides she doesn't really mind after all. She surmises the game lacks scientific grounding. Sean Ho agrees, saying it's just mindless fun, but Suyin is not finished yet. One aspect greatly concerns her. She immediately identifies that he himself is an awakener. Though slightly disappointed by her accurate guess, he concedes that Suyin's intellect is formidable. She perceives from the depth and clarity of his game knowledge that there's not a chance he hasn't played it himself. Suyin chooses not to dwell on the thought any longer, giving our protagonist a nod of gratitude for his summary. Meanwhile, Hung Jun nurses a twinge of envy for not having explained things so well himself. The physician teases him, saying he's nowhere near as profound in knowledge as Xiang Ho is about this game. Thankful for his assistance, Suyin warmly befriends Song Ho, recognizing his good nature. That adds yet another striking member to the Herm company. The following day, our hero is back in his quarters, polishing his new spear blade. His latest weapon gleams enticingly, and he's eager to put its prowess to the test in actual combat. With Sean Ho fully prepared, he whistles for his loyal companion, Dingo, and shares that they are about to set out in pursuit of retribution for his mother. It's not true vengeance, perhaps, but regardless it will cause great trouble if any strangers stumble upon Shang Ho's retreat. Because of this, they must act fast and swiftly eliminate these potential threats. In the ensuing scene, John Wick and his loyal canine stand ready to take lives. For this mission, Dingo's role is vital. As they size up their quarry, they observe only 4 wolves present, an odd sight. Most notably absent is an alpha wolf among them. Careful scrutiny leads Zhang Ho to truly grasp the situation's reality. An owl bear is voraciously tearing into the remains of several wolves, having mauled them together. Zhang Ho muses that the creature is rather helpful for taking out multiple opponents. A peculiar trait of the man-wolf pack is that if the alpha falls, the entire group quickly loses structure. Their senses fray and disarray follows, breaking their unity. There couldn't be a better opportunity for our hero to pick them off each in turn. Right on cue, a wolf charges at him, but Shan Ho methodically triggers his web trap, snaring it with little effort. The fierce predator is instantly reduced to pitiful whimpers, resembling a frightened pup dreading its end. Nonetheless, these mediocre ruses are useless against our protagonist, who dispatches the creature with a swift strike of his spear. Though one might pity the wolf's fate, completing the mission remains crucial. With this defeat, he collects 3 points. The other 3 wolves quickly become enticed by seeing Ho's movements as he takes flight. The trio grows even more aggressive, taking up the hunt after him. 2 flank him on either side while another leaps from above to secure the prey. But there's no cause for worry. A spray of his insect repellent halts one wolf, though now Seiho is flanked by the other 2 still pressing their attack. He quickly pivots to meet the threat on his right, driving his spear deep into the animal's abdomen. The last wolf seizes the moment to attack from the rear, but Dingo shields our hero with a well-timed, forceful tackle. With the next wolf defeated, he earns another 3 points. Seeing Ho grimly announces that he merely has to thrust his spear into each one until they're silenced. He isn't simply in harm's way, he has become the very peril itself. Having crushed the wolf pack, he ascends to level 5, acquiring new enhancements to his unique talent. Curiosity piqued, he examines his gate's attributes. Now his gate is entirely invisible to all others, and a projection feature is added, granting him the ability to hear sounds from any projected location. Eager to experiment, Zhang Ho activates the gate right away. For the first time, he can truly peer through his own home without ever setting foot outside or circling to the far side. The see-through effect actually succeeds. Now, no one will be able to recognize his skill any longer. On top of that, Shan Ho had been troubled by the possibility that he might stumble into a dungeon, unaware of just how perilous it could be until crossing through its threshold. With the current projection feature, though, that danger fades away completely. The emergence of this ability at level 5 hints that even greater marvels may await him at the ascendant ranks yet to come. He had never truly imagined those apparently insignificant ranks could offer real prizes, and nevertheless his tasks remained daunting and plentiful. His first order of business, seeing to the burial of those slain wolves, the pack he'd overcome. 2 days after subduing the wolves, the boy took note and busied himself with numerous tasks. To begin, he returned to the other realm, continuing his reconnaissance by piloting his drone over new terrain. After designating a search area of roughly 1 kilometer radius, he identified several different, but harmless, creatures. And still not a trace of a goblin, nor even a kobold appeared. No signs of monsters at all. The next step was for Zhang Ho to gather intelligence concerning the goblin lair situated some 30 kilometers out. Such a nest was rumored to be large enough to shelter a number of hobgoblins as well, forecasting a formidable battle should they clash. With newfound confidence about their security, Go sensed this was the ideal moment to begin enlarging his domain. He transformed himself into a woodsman hero with his own take on legendary Pachetta, clearing the woods with a chainsaw, leveling earth, and converting the hasty hideout into a real shelter base. Dingo carried the team, fashioning a broad ring that would serve as the field's border. Putting caution above all, Shan Ho erected not 1 but 2 bristling fences of barbed wire, ringing the camp with an encircling ditch, planning to deepen it by 2 more meters so it would work in tandem with the barrier. As he poured himself into those defenses, he also made the most of that projected portal to keep one eye on the news, where the government had just announced it would soon launch a thorough investigation into awakeners. While back in his mundane life, he was quietly stocking up at hardware stores. He canvassed many home improvement outlets, gathering all sorts of tools needed for the coming work. On his journey back home, curiosity got the best of him and he covertly observed Chihin's lair, taking note of its every detail. Making an extra effort, Xiang Ho decided to rent both a motorcycle and a compact digger, which with some hands-on learning could become valuable assets soon. The small azure toad still provided exceptional help. With steady patience, Ai-ho kept practicing self-immunization with trace amounts of toxin, saving the rest to eventually infuse into a chosen item. Returning to his own room, he was confronted by a stunning and unexpected sight. Survivor 1, a gamer with no fewer than 500 hours under his belt, stepped up to the new mission. This pushed Sean Ho to ponder not just the confusing Uedo standoff and the government's subtle grip on news, but other deeper issues as well, even including the striking fact that the president was holed up in a single spot. These three events may appear at a glance to be mere coincidences, and yet our protagonist perceives they reveal a far more tangled truth. For him, the core idea hasn't wavered. Survive 1 likely has a relationship with the president, focused around security, and probably holds greater insight into what's really going on. Survivor 1 reputation marks him as an artifact seeker, making it very probable that he'd request extensive refuge from the president, trading prized knowledge for guaranteed protection. He carefully selected with whom to align himself, setting his sights on the president to secure the greatest influence and command. Matters are tangled and complex. Zion Ho ponders whether this could be an elaborate ruse, yet my vision doesn't align with that suspicion. Resting with these thoughts for over an hour sends ripples of ache through Sion Ho's mind, yet at last he settles on a decision. Should both Survivor 1 and My Dream be working together, then it's clear our protagonist must also adapt and reinvent his approach. Following this, we witness Mr. Four Eyes constructing an entirely fresh profile and VR persona. He's left uncertain if a reply will come, as this might force him to defer everything he's planned. Remarkably, My Dream answers with impressive speed. It must be true that some among these gamers steer clear of both the workplace and mingling, or so it seems. Even his brother presumes this person is between jobs, although he's eager to determine whether this avatar truly is on the level, and so heads into a VR conversation. Initiating their exchange, My Dream materializes in the blinding white expanse of the chatroom. For those devoted to Classroom of the Elite, the nod here will be clear. The two adversaries take their stances. My Dream is markedly irked by the stranger's nameless guise. Even with his agreement to join, the other's foolish duck-faced avatar only heightens his annoyance. The apologetic duck seems unfazed, shrugging off the offense. This leads My Dream to suspect he's in the company of a canny old hand insistent on maintaining secrecy, yet still kept blindsided by Duckface's skillful deception. Determined to assess him, My Dream poses a triad of crucial questions. Only with satisfactory answers will he recognize this ludicrous duck. First, what is the werewolf's peak leap? Without pause, our protagonist snaps back 3 meters. He even rattles off the basic vulnerability of an owlbear, its light, as anyone would expect. Then comes the question of zombies' evolutionary progression and the different forms they may assume. Duckface replies, instead of spreading infection, these zombies must actually digest nutrients to continually function, and by hoarding sustenance they develop into ghouls. Appropriately, some even find themselves transformed into more formidable zombies before reaching that step. Though promising only 3 inquiries, My Dream tosses in another, a 4th, but our player refuses to disclose how many precursor events are woven through the tale. Upon this defiance, the opponent lets out a laugh, conceding that Duckface is thus revealed to be a true veteran. Yet irritation flares in our protagonist as he presses this character to contact Survivor 1 and bring him into their discussion. But as it turns out, this isn't possible at present. My Dream doesn't even supply an explanation, leaving our duck-faced hero to call his bluff directly. Without missing a beat, the latter tips his hat, slyly alerting of imminent developments. A glimmer of doubt enters our boy's mind, considering that this fellow might be more unstable than originally thought. It almost seems as though he's speaking in circles, attempting to buy time for a purpose just out of reach. Suddenly, the recognition of what's truly unfolding sends a cold current surging along his spine. With a swift departure, My Dream leaves the chat, only for our protagonist to arrive at the staggering realization that the other was uncovering his private details all along. Just then, a man makes his entrance at the cafe, flanked by 2 guards, and commands them to seal the doors. The receptionist insists all must pay at the counter for their allotted time, but this intruder brusquely grabs her arm, not bothering with formalities, stating plainly they're searching for someone, not here simply to play. The irony is not lost on Yang-ho. My dream should be lying low and acting discreet, yet peculiarly he seems suddenly aggressive. Incidentally, this one possesses an ability much like Lelouch's from Code Geass. He exerts sway over the receptionist's will with chilling ease. At this juncture, our protagonist finds himself in dire straits. He must escape quickly lest he be ensnared and share the same fate. Thus, he makes his way to the bathroom and quietly cracks open his dimensional gate skill. Meanwhile, the pursuer roams about, relentlessly employing his psychic abilities on bystanders in a frantic quest for Shan-ho's whereabouts. Every area but a single spot has been investigated, finally steering the searcher toward the restroom. This detective is utterly sure our protagonist has taken refuge in that very place. Opening each cubicle, he can't help speculating if he's hunting down some elusive assassin schooled in concealment. Imagine if, with comedic irony, this guy bursts in only to disturb an unsuspecting stranger mid-business. Still, I'm fully convinced my dream is at ease when it comes to ghost-like enemies. He tosses a bucketful of water across the room in hopes of spotting irregularities and scans around with frantic gestures to somehow discover Zhang Ho. Lucky for our man, he set up the gateway completely flush with the wall. At that moment, the hunter finds himself unwittingly face to face with the very portal. Yet, its presence eludes his vision. Completing the sweep, my dream admits his verdict was off. It's clear now our protagonist is not a master of stealth. Instead, his new theory casts Shan-ho as an expert in spatial movement. Impatient, Budget Nami gives his team instructions to comb the entire vicinity and dangles the promise of a handsome reward for capturing their target. Peering through his dimensional threshold, Zhang-ho reflects that, while fortunate in life and humble in this virtual challenge, he hadn't pictured arriving at such stakes. Internally, he offers silent thanks to my dream for clarifying everything. All his uncertainty banished, Song-ho comes to the unshakable realization of his necessary course. Stepping out of concealment, he's resolved to confront matters directly. He will not shy away from returning force when threatened. Evaluating the challenger's size, the hunter repeats his question of where Zion-ho is hidden, now certain he's chasing a master of movement arts. Still, even a seasoned veteran, sharpened by endless hours of experience, presents no easy quarry. To everyone's surprise, our protagonist materializes out of thin air, startling as a specter, greeting, "Hi!" My dream catches his reflection just as Ho charges, launching a spear thrust. The deadly spear slices open his opponent's leg, and in a heartbeat, venom courses through his system. Intent on racking up power all this time, just one critical mistake brought him to ruin. Wasting no time confirming identities, our protagonist crashes his adversary's face into the wall, a pointed lesson not to look back from fear. He goads the stricken man for the discomfort spreading through him thanks to poison. Each attempt at speech is silenced by Shang-ho, who seizes his blade and reminds that the chaos ahead, the apocalypse and trial, has not yet begun. The same principle applies to the tyrant system. With these words, Zhang-ho slashes away the gun holstered at the man's side. With chilling gravity, Zhang-ho threatens that his life might end here with no repercussions. Leveling his blade at the adversary's throat, he is met only with silent compliance. Zhang-ho is quietly impressed at the man's newfound discretion. Now paralyzed but still aware, the unfortunate soul won't be regaining movement for as long as the venom holds sway. Opening his interrogation, Shan-ho demands an answer for targeting Survivor 1 and why innocents were endangered in pursuit of that goal. Now, the very man who once stalked his prey was reduced to nothing more than a powerless casualty. That wretched creature was now so feeble he could be dispatched with ease, requiring hardly an effort. My dream persona seizes his weapon and sternly reminds him, this is the fate awaiting anyone even daring to imagine bringing him down. Our protagonist grips his blade and with a cold menace threatens to end the man's life if their paths ever cross again. After this ordeal, Shan-ho made his quick getaway from the cafe, hours ahead of the My Dreams party's entrance. He reached his house peacefully and soon crossed over to the alternate dimension. There, he carefully dismantled the weapon and scrutinized the stranger's identification. The name, Kwan Keong Jun. The man is in his late 30s, manages a golf establishment, even holds sway over 3 bunkers through it. Lastly, he's a benefactor to several women, meaning he enjoys every sweet benefit that situation affords. Assessing his talents, Zhang Ho presumes the man must wield a formidable gift, judging by how thoroughly he's immersed himself in the game. The talent is tied to influencing minds, this much is certain. Sean Ho now has all this crucial knowledge at his disposal. Yet he reflects that mastering a skill isn't just a result of long hours spent playing. After all, even die-hard fans of Valorant and Counter-Strike put in untold hours without ever climbing out of the lower rungs. Regardless, Zhang Ho observes that the game's priority is always set on survival above all else. His portal ability functions as a sort of hidden advantage, most useful to those experienced. For now, he wants to treat this as a hypothesis until he can verify another veteran's unique power. Next, Sean Ho puts the firearm through its paces, silently pondering the imminence of catastrophe. One thing fills him with unwavering certainty, and accompanied by Dingo, he pushes through the woodland's shadows. It's at this moment that his loyal hound gives a sharp bark at a peculiar spot. Here, he finds sprawled the lifeless forms of police officers among a heap of goblins. Maintaining a steady nerve, our protagonist examines the state of those bodies. He discovers one officer to be clinging to life, although bearing no mortal injuries. A paralysis poison afflicts the man, yet more troubling is the absence of his weapon, although perhaps he was unequipped to begin with. With that, Zango brings the 2 bodies together, instructing they remain settled for half an hour to let the poison wear off. He then swivels to study the slain goblins. At a glance, the many bullet wounds, evident confirmation that the officers had indeed been armed. The real mystery, why has only the firearm vanished? After weighing it, Sean Ho pieces it together and suspects the culprit is a gold goblin. Rather than alarm him, this insight ignites excitement, for now he's determined to track down the creature himself. With resolve firm, our protagonist reaches for his phone to alert emergency services. He has also left a message detailing the exact coordinates and recommendations to properly bury the remnants of the goblins. Zhang Ho realizes that monsters have already stepped into public awareness, erasing any need for secrets and shadowy caution. He is presently racing against the clock, wishing that this compact engine of destruction nearby might give him an advantage. Elsewhere, a struggle flares between a goblin and someone unblessed with awakening. The goblin swiftly evades his attack and flees. 3 goblins remain, while the young man casts a questioning glance at his captain, doubting if this approach truly makes sense. He can't grasp why he has to stand in as the group's shield when he lacks any supernatural gifts whatsoever. The captain demonstrates his prowess, boasting an advantage through his mastery of psychokinesis. The only downside is that invoking this power takes a bit of time before it can actually manifest. Our man has amassed a cluster of stones at the ready, and now he sends them flying, seeking to shatter the goblin's form. He supports from the sidelines while his partner wonders aloud about the arrival of the other party members. Their captain responds, noting that the group headed for Gossan Mountain, though it seems they hit a halt and couldn't climb further. This comes as a harsh surprise for the ordinary fellow who lacks special gifts. He's inclined to withdraw, but his captain holds firm, wanting to advance. Suddenly, 3 goblins descend upon our hero, on the verge of pummeling him before more stones crash into them, scattering their assault. Fortunately, these goblins don't possess the same strength they did in the original game. The captain reassures their partner, urging perseverance with a calm mind. Provided they can defeat the monsters and seize the hobgoblin pack, a great advantage awaits them. While busy expounding important points, the wielder of psychokinesis loses focus and suffers a blow from a goblin's mace. With his hand now badly injured, this man finds himself unable to make use of his powers. Even more humbling is discovering that a lowly goblin managed to outmaneuver him with a smart countermove. If I stood in his place, I'd too be ready to throw in the towel. Vulnerable, they are swiftly surrounded by all 3 goblins who rush in from every angle. It seemed these novices were about to meet their downfall, when an arrow suddenly pierced a goblin's skull. A second, then a third arrow swiftly follow, injuring the remaining goblins. Stunned, the dazed pair cannot grasp who is intervening on their behalf. They scan the shadowy woods, utterly baffled by the arrow's origin. Next, our protagonist is revealed wielding his battle-ready bow. He initially ponders whether it was wise to intervene and expend his precious ammunition. Simultaneously, Shan Ho simply feels relieved that he managed to gather some vital facts concerning the newly awakened. First off, he discovered these individuals were hindered from ascending the mountain. Second, he found a gathering of goblins already in a weakened state. Combining these bits of knowledge, Shan Ho weaves the next stage of his plan. He already has a solution ready for this goblin threat. His approach remains elegantly straightforward. The plan focuses on antagonizing the goblin, achievable by tossing a stone its way. After goading the irate, bald green creature, he'll redirect it towards the dimensional portal gate using subtle hints. When the goblin is sufficiently close to the portal, Go will strike from the opposite side, exploiting his advantage of perceiving through the gate while no one else can see him. With its first victim grievously hurt, that creature will wail, drawing the attention of its comrades. Employing the same portal as a shield, Zion Go forcefully withdraws his spear from the goblin's form, leaving no sign of his intervention behind. Let us now turn our attention to the hobgoblin's reaction, a creature blessed with a keen perception in this realm. It quickly notices the fallen subordinate and swiftly accuses the other goblins of scheming its demise. This incident kindles discord within the ranks, shattering their unity and encouraging the goblins to drift away from their commander. Seizing that critical moment, the shrewd Go appears on the opposing side and efficiently beheads his foes, skillfully capitalizing on the advantage granted by striking first. This cycle is set to continue as before. His strategy seems to be unfolding seamlessly for now, yet Shan Ho must remain vigilant of peculiar tendencies amongst the other goblins. To his great surprise, our protagonist encounters an unexpected turn. As the hobgoblin confronts him directly, the gold goblin bolts off with the treasure, suggesting discord has erupted amongst them. Such circumstances do not bode well, for he now finds himself forced into a last-ditch gamble. His pressing concern lies with Captain Mustard rapidly closing the distance. Truly, Shan Go cannot see any more choices left before him. He channels all his might to defend against the tremendous blow dealt to him. Yet despite his best efforts to guard himself, the force of the attack reverberates through him, crashing his body against a nearby tree. Now trembling and noticeably harmed, Shan Ho's predicament grows dire. The hobgoblin wastes no breath and moves in to strike a finishing blow. Should he fall at this juncture, he knows utter ruin awaits him. At that moment, the mace whistles through the air, aiming to shatter his skull. As Shan Ho's vitality dwindles, a fateful trigger is pulled. His survival instinct skill flares a golden light, prompting a lightning response to the hobgoblin's ongoing assault from point blank. Rather than attempt to kill the beast before him, he pivots and chases down the gold goblin instead, a brilliant maneuver. Wielding the firearm he acquired from Kung Jun, he lines up a shot and dispatches the gold goblin with a precise headshot, ending its story on the spot. At once, he calls upon the dimensional gate. Shan Ho has already cleared the opening act of his quest for resources. However, trouble yet lingers, for a monstrous pursuer remains hot on his trail. Pulling his gun, our hero steps undaunted into melee, opening fire on the advancing creature, determined to bring it low. The hobgoblin is unable to endure the relentless pulse of an American-style offensive technique and falls in utter defeat. Zion Ho repays every slight with interest, slashing the hobgoblin's frame with swift, artful strokes. A final scream marks its end as the hobgoblin perishes, earning our protagonist a jump to level 6 and rewarding him 16 points. At long last, his exhausting odyssey comes to an end. He examines the newly acquired skill, Terrain Sense, granting him heightened awareness and response to his environment. Curious still, just as before, all items he held or utilized transform themselves into tangible, enhanced objects. Shan Ho cannot afford to dawdle. He senses another party searching in this direction. Now that he possesses his sought-after prizes, our protagonist conjures the dimensional portal and steps inside, choosing to lie low in his haven until the search passes. Come morning, Shan Ho is roused from sleep by none other than the loyal dog everyone holds dear. A glance at his watch tells him the truth. his wounds left him sleeping the whole day away. Aware of the grave risks connected to his survival instinct, Zhang Ho vows it shall serve him only under utmost necessity. Before his forthcoming adventure, his curiosity is piqued. He must inspect the spoils seized from the gold goblin. He empties out his haul upon the table, a collection of revolvers, a keen dagger, and sundry utensils. When it involved arms, these goblins proved to be unparalleled artisans. Though Ho finds the revolver satisfactory, the true treasure in his eyes remains the gleaming meteor blade he was clever enough to procure. This artifact stands as a weapon endowed with unwavering permanence, a rarity within the realm of the game. Among the select few weapons, it remains untouched by the looming disease disaster. Yet his mind keeps returning to a nagging puzzle. By what stroke of fate did a goblin happen upon such a coveted item, priced extravagantly at 100 points in the marketplace? Scrutinizing the blade from hilt to tip, Zhang Ho discerns its shortcomings. The weapon is marred with flaws and lacks perfection. Lost in reflection, a flash of deeper understanding sweeps over him. Within this world, goblins are seen wielding forged metal arms. Given their intellect, there's no way such unsophisticated beings forged these implements unaided. So it prompts speculation. Did a strange mutation unexpectedly shift the course of their culture? This implies that somewhere even clever goblins exist, dabbling in experimentation like scholarly researchers. Still, our protagonist recognizes the theory is merely conjecture for now. He's tempted to probe it later, but at this moment, unpacking the small pouches grabs his curiosity instead. Fortune smiles as Zhang Ho draws out a cluster of shade grapes. This peculiarly rare fruit sharpens one's nocturnal sight. Their presence makes sense. Now it's clear how the goblins so nimbly traverse the night. Bringing up his status panel, our protagonist examines the trajectory of his growth. Pleased with what he sees, he notes his current advancement outpaces the rate in the game. After settling the essentials, Zhang Ho senses it's his moment to return to reality. Activating his power, he steps through the portal while casually flicking through his phone. Immediately upon regaining connectivity, his device begins vibrating non-stop. Haiyang Jun, Mikhaiyong, and even Suyin have each messaged, checking up on him. Flooded with this attention, he can't help but wonder if he's become quite the popular one. His first destination, however, is the fitness center. So, in the following scenario, Zhang Ho bursts through the doorway to rendezvous with his companions. He barely has time for a proper greeting before they rush to embrace him, grateful he's unharmed. And yes, the One Piece exists, don't ever doubt that. Intrigued, our hero inquires about the unfamiliar faces nearby. Hong Jun leads the newcomers forward, presenting them as members of his team. Lai Kong Hun and Kim Bora offer a warm introduction, exchanging civil salutations with him. Zion Ho had anticipated one additional member, but learns this individual is off buying outdoor equipment from a discount outlet. Our main character is amazed to discover such a shop even exists, prompting M. Kaiyong to chime in, assuring him it's sleek, contemporary, and a recent addition. Jim Bro wonders whether our protagonist is informed about the incident fired up on the news, and Sean Ho confirms, explaining he's entirely up to speed. Perhaps we should set up our own channel there too. The physician responsible for dissecting the goblin specimen from Gossan Mountain lost composure and advised all to ready themselves for an imminent calamity. The nation's leader assembled a public forum as well, announcing ongoing efforts to locate the originator of the game. Hainjun inquires after Zhang Ho's future ambitions. Their assembly hinges largely on our main character's thorough knowledge of the game. Kaiyong Hun is faintly perturbed, thinking Hong Jun shouldn't persist in seeking guidance since it's obvious goblins offer points. Thus, if an awakened one ended a creature, the leap would be immediately from level 1 to 2. The strategy then becomes accumulation of resources. Presently, our hero observes the man elaborate nonsense, with no clue of how off the mark he actually is. Looking straight at him, Sean Ho points out that everything said is entirely mistaken. This disagreeable fellow interrupts our boy, questioning whether he's even played the game, much like a stubborn forum user unable to respect another perspective. Sean Ho simply replies that he hasn't, attempting to preserve some anonymity. Still, that slim admission is all this guy needs to launch into a lecturing rant, insisting that blindly putting faith in the community is foolish. Bora, the other young woman, turns her attention with an inquiry for him. With intense curiosity about the spread of the zombie infection, she quizzes him about the transmission of the spores, also pressing to know if any prerequisites exist. Oddly enough, he claims that those who have encountered an awakened individual wouldn't become zombies, a bewildering answer if ever there was one. Slamming his palm on the table, Kyung-hun rises with self-importance, believing his awakened status gives him authority. To him, personal experience is absolute. Even casual, ordinary folks meeting him apparently become immune to spore infection by default. It's basically a slew of empty claims, yet somehow Bora seems swayed and clings to Kyung-hun as though he's the voice of wisdom. Next, Mikyung edges in with her question, wondering if he has survived the infamous challenging tutorial levels. But once more, Kyung-hun interrupts her too, assuring her of his protection so she needn't worry. Such smugness grates deeply on Zion-ho's sensibilities. While Zion-ho acknowledges some merit to Kyung-hun's ideas, he also realizes there isn't a shred of real proof that awakened folks are wholly immune to the infection. This discussion feels fully derailed by just one person, making Zion-ho finally grasp Hungjun's earlier reasons for calling. Letting the distracting troublemaker mention fall away, he stands and decides to go, even as his companions plead for him to remain. Xiang-ho feels no urge to share his insights with someone like this, so with parting words he departs, expecting they'll see each other in due course. Beyond the fitness center, he methodically charts out places to gather resources before the arrival of the iron disease. Seongo eyes a camping supply store his friends recommended, and later, after finishing these errands, he finds himself back home, only to be greeted by the graceful Suyin. She had truly brought something meant for him, graciously lingering until his return. Presenting a kit branded as first aid, but really containing a collection of analgesics and other antibiotics impossible to acquire without a valid prescription, Suin hands him a valuable gift. The gesture is genuinely special, leaving Xiang-ho marveling at her kindness. The physician nonchalantly gives him her address but has neatly tucked a written note within the medical pouch. Again, our hero puzzles over her motivations. Yet this delightful doctor insists it's perfectly reasonable to share her location now that they are acquainted. For what it's worth, Suin has my vote since Mikong comes off like a less charming Chahain. As I mentioned, Suin departs, wishing him well before rushing off for her engagement with the director. Walking off, she abruptly remembers something. Suin flashes a grin and tells him he'll need to cover the cost of the meds, nodding towards her address as the reason why. This leaves Zhang-ho bewildered. Discerning Su Yian's feelings or intentions appears impossible. With their separation, hours passed in a blur. Through those fleeting hours, our Ini hero roamed the city, gathering an assortment of supplies from scattered shops. That done, he set about arranging a proper storage area, sandwich panels in place. He began stacking items within. Recalling that mini excavator he'd secured in advance, Sean-ho now operated it intensely for his construction efforts. In time, the world's tensions sharpened to fever pitch. Pandemonium grew in the streets, politicians clashed, disputes over truth abounded, and skeptics endlessly volleyed between certainty and doubt. All these circumstances culminated in an urgent assembly at the United Nations, where discussions centered around the U.S. president's intentions to visit Korea. At last, the HSA detected something they never could have imagined. As if the mounting threats weren't enough, the asteroid fated to ignite the age of the undead was hurtling toward Earth. 4 days after this grim revelation, Sean-ho stands at Gamkeon Port, gazing at the lush panorama of the sea. It's at this moment that the final background tale known as the Russian ship event is staged. After confirming the coast was clear, Seon-ho slipped into an abandoned structure to finalize his last-minute plans. In that dim place, he unveils his intentions, revealing why he came here despite the immense chances of ending up a zombie. His goal is to secure an array of different firearms from the vessel. The nature of zombie spores was that they were virulent beams, not something one could just avoid. Succumbing to zombification today or in 5 days felt equally inevitable, especially to someone whose family ties did not anchor him here. Xiang-ho recognized that the option to exist in another world with Dingo always lingered before him. Yet pursuing that path would strip his existence of any true purpose as a human. With his arrangements complete, he sets his intentions straight, it's not a reckless quest for death he's begun. He's made a decision most would shrink from, a bold step along a difficult path, seeking higher stakes and reward. Such perhaps is the very fabric of living. Sean Ho peruses the patch notes regarding this juncture, presuming the prized weapon is an ebony club, and can't help musing on how feeble the zombie presence must be for this phase of the saga. Points and influences will ripple out in the wake of the asteroid's crash. The descriptions radiate such certainty that it's clear the game's architect foresaw every twist to come. Seiho was absorbed in his phone when the predicament sharply escalated. An urgent alert reached him, warning of an impending tsunami tied to the third Harbinger event. Soon after, the waves edge up to land, surging ever further with each swell. Further out at sea, a ship is tossed carelessly among the tumultuous breakers. Zhang Ho clearly notices that water has overtaken the city, and now his dilemma is to confront monsters or contend with zombies. Eyeing the ship, he shares his own reflections about the profound helplessness that nature's fury can instill in people. Nevertheless, he must respond within this whirlwind, making his way forward using his little boat. Seong Ho dashes full out, cradling his vessel, and leaps determinedly from the building, driven by the urgency of his limited window. Everything needed resolving before the authorities arrived on the scene. Later, he manages to secure himself to the ship. Thus far, luck is on his side. Awakeners, unlike others, are spared the fate of turning into zombies, meaning Kyong Hun's suspicion proved to be astute. In fact, at present, he doesn't feel so much as a tinge of discomfort whatsoever. That alone brings a sense of relief. Up the ladder he climbs to commence the next act. On board, shadows flit, the undead haunting the decks. Calling to them, he gathers their focus. Here stands our protagonist in shorts, shield, and mace in hand, not unlike a real-life hero. The zombies within this reality are exceptional in nature. Though the infection doesn't propagate between them, they still hunt anything that comes close. They also exhibited a tendency to grow more powerful as they absorbed greater amounts of sustenance. Zhang Ho hurls himself back at the undead and crushes one under the weight of his shield. After dispatching the first creature, he lifts his mace and urges the wretch to brace for the impact. Then, as if performing a hurried yet skilled transformation, he forcefully remodels the ghoul's visage within the span of an hour and 33 minutes. Noting how effortlessly these two were felled, Zhang Ho ponders whether the zombies had been weakened excessively. Earning 2 points, he recalls that in earlier days dispatching a zombie demanded at least 2 strikes or more. Yet now, a single blow had sufficed. With memories of what transpired with the orcs lingering, he refuses to allow complacency a foothold. Repeating such an error twice would surely be the end of him. Afterward, Zhang Ho peers into the corridor and discovers a cluster of zombies confined within. Some lurk about, so he charges forward without hesitation, battering them without mercy. Determined to track down a pistol, he fixes his gaze on the wheelhouse, until a sudden gunshot resounds, leaving him utterly startled. He finds it inconceivable that anyone could have made it through the vessel's zombie horde. Rushing toward the echoing report, Sun Ho concedes, sometimes those unawakened souls find bits of fortune after mingling with awakeners and are spared the spores through this chance contact. His priority is rescuing this survivor, hoping to gather further clues. But upon his arrival, he finds the unlucky individual already departed from this world. In his final moment, the man clutches a cherished photograph in his hands. Within this reality, Naruto Uzumaki could never ascend to become the 7th Hokage. Nonetheless, Ho greatly benefits by claiming the man's abandoned firearm for his own protection. He gently arranges the body for rest and leaves the chamber. Becoming steeled for sorrow is essential for Ho, for in the aftermath of calamity, this would be his new standard. Quite naturally, circumstances may command him to take the lives of fellow humans only to ensure his own hope for endurance. While releasing the anchor, Zhang Ho startles himself, witnessing an individual skimming over the waves on a jet ski nearby. This sight affirms that, just as he suspected, another competitor has come seeking to earn their own rewards. Though their paths cross, our unlikely hero slips away from the ship with his spoils. He feels no particular concern about the new arrival's intentions at this place. The next safekeeping morning brings the first whisperings on the news, the disappearance of the game's mysterious creator, and a city's mounting frustration as no one appears to hold the answers. The obtained undeniable disappearance of the evidence of game's zombies he has been relentlessly taking bold measures without pause. Cities appears to hold the mounting answers. In short, Zhang Ho finds that the head of their nation shares a way of thinking remarkably akin to his own. Suddenly recalling an urgent matter, our young protagonist contacts Li Wub, the administrator stationed at the emergency response headquarters. At once he reveals with staggering honesty the precise moment when the impending doom will commence. To validate himself, Ho brings up the bullet wounds he inflicted on the hobgoblin exactly 1 hour and 35 minutes ago. Wub is genuinely surprised to discover this is indeed the same player as before. With urgency, our protagonist compels him to jot critical information in a frenzied hurry, listing down the precise date, hour, and even peculiarities like a parcel's afternoon arrival. Sean Ho expresses his hope that the countermeasures team puts these revelations to good use and offers his heartfelt wishes for success in the approaching conflict. The president executed an extraordinarily resolute maneuver. Within the forum community, people slowly sensed that the crisis was deepening with alarming speed. Internet and electricity were destined to fail soon, but such perspectives could only be approached with caution. He's not entirely convinced all this will truly unfold. Soon, a government statement was broadcast advising citizens to secure provisions of food and water for 4 days and to gather at home with their families. The armed forces started active patrols, firmly ordering everyone to immediately suspend their activities. A definitive update would arrive by July 20th. Sean Ho observes everything, believing this reaction is flawless, yet he feels regret for not earlier alerting people about the oncoming storm. Had he realized from the outset how competently the government would respond, he would have acted decisively from the beginning and used his talent to its fullest just 1 hour and 36 minutes before. It seems a monumental oversight. Still, Zhang Ho accepts that confessing it wouldn't have stopped the tragedy. There's little use mulling over what if, except recalling his sworn oath to himself. Firstly, he is not some sort of valiant champion, nor does he aspire to be. He is merely a regular person. Subsequently, we discover that the wave of lockdowns and state quarantines threw the world into turmoil, making it an insurmountable labyrinth. As a result, Zion Ho spent most days within another realm. 3 days before disaster's dawn, he concluded digging his shelter, albeit at a sluggish pace. He also archived all his reference videos on agriculture and cooking, knowing the era of the internet would soon come to an end. When 2 days remained before the end, he roamed his surroundings with companion Dingo, pleasantly surprised to discover several golden apples. Finding these miracles left him wondering if this land was under some enchantment, as though favored by fortune and fertility. On the eve of the world's collapse, a fresh dilemma emerged. Zhang Ho noticed that 2 sweet potato jelly pouches vanished from storage and curiously found a shriveled grape in their place. All evidence points to Dingo as the culprit, yet the faithful dog shakes his head in earnest denial of any mischief. Xiang Ho, aiming to coax the truth with both playful and firm persistence, interrogates his small companion, but the dog protests tearfully, flailing as if to insist upon his purity. Be sure to show your support for this video. Dingo deserves justice. Co finally realizes the culprit wasn't his tiny fluffball companion but another source entirely. Determined to uncover the truth, he decides to review the security camera recordings to grasp what truly occurred. Seon Ho examines his laptop, his eyes wide in amazement as he witnesses a horde of beetles sneaking in through the doggy entrance. The creatures made off with the jelly, thoughtfully leaving a grape behind as payment. Honestly, I've hardly seen anything more delightful today. One of the beetles even pauses to gesture gratitude toward the camera, as if to prove that these little beings possess remarkable intelligence. Fueled by curiosity, Ho now feels an intense urge to converse directly with a few of these mysterious guests. However, to err on the side of caution, he secures the pet door, much to poor Dingo's dismay. Yet our protagonist must soon depart from this reality, since some special visitors are expected shortly. He therefore reopens the portal to another dimension and returns. The following moment finds Seon Ho seated among key allies and friends, all surprisingly safe even after the lockdown. Spotting a newcomer, he learns the rookie is the group's final member. With a princely aura, Yuyan has already experienced his awakening. Although Yuyan lacks knowledge about their game, he studies electrical engineering and boasts practical skills. Zhang is delighted with his arrival and makes a point to proclaim himself as one who hasn't awakened. The scene is cordially polite as the two exchange greetings. Nonetheless, Ho aims to settle critical matters at once, saying each should present their insights in turn, beginning with Jim Bro Hung Jun Walmart. Yuji takes the floor, recounting an incident involving his former wife. Their call was disrupted and worried, he set out after his daughter. On the way home, he observed a buildup of highway barricades. Through digging deeper, Hung Jun realized the officials' aim was to relocate locals near the petrochemical plant to safety. The elegant doctor's contribution comes next, bringing forth a significant update. Suin had noticed a shelter taking shape in the nearby park, a startling but genuine revelation. Next is Mikhayon, who, while visiting the market, overheard talk about senior bureaucrats clashing with the president, resulting in their arrest. Ho realizes these collected observations are far more pivotal than he had supposed. The finale is near and the president's actions are now transparent. His anticipation of coming events is clear. So why gather information individually? Because, in a network, aligning information to specific reasoning is key. He could easily reveal his own experience as a veteran to sway opinions, but he understands this might compromise his safety. Zhang then steps forward, requesting that everyone pay close attention to what he is about to disclose. With confidence, he proclaims that the president's true plan is to forge an apocalyptic scenario under tight control, leaving everyone present utterly aghast. Sean H. Go further backs up the claims, highlighting sudden widespread shutdowns and the inexplicable freezing of state operations. Only a single justification could compel such sweeping government measures so swiftly. Suyin quickly pieces the clues together, sensing the ultimate calamity approaches. She's swift to deduce that the authorities must know the exact timing of apocalypse, to which Xiang'o agrees, naming July 20th as the likely date. Alarmed, Yuan rises to warn his family, only for our main character to urgently call out after him. He doesn't wish for these misfits to succumb to madness, however harsh that might sound. Personal survival far outweighed the significance of kin. Seon wholly gently cautions everyone gathered that any among them could awaken as a zombie the very next day. Thus, the shadow of death hovers anxiously over every soul present. Returning to the matter at hand, he fishes out a stack of folders, openly recognizing the true motive for their assembly. His preparations include a meticulously designed tutorial strategy, as well as comprehensive revelations for survival techniques. When Haiyang Jun probes about the origin of his data, Xiang Ho calmly attributes it to watching the broadcasted streams. He even expresses regret to Mikhayon for concealing the truth, though she shrugs it off, admitting she too had kept secrets. Because of the documents, they can now apply these insights in whatever way benefits them best. Meanwhile, Xiang Ho earnestly urges everyone to adhere strictly to the guide if they wish to survive the tutorial portion. Their deliberation concluded as midnight crept in. This marked the last occasion peace would grace the world before descending into catastrophe. For 32 days straight, Seiho diligently readied himself, improving every skill to tip the odds in his favor. Yet doubts linger. He suspects flaws remain and knows his anonymous status could someday bring down ruin upon himself. Nonetheless, this young man of courage embraces his choices, carrying no regrets. With assurance in his steps, Xianho stood witness as his homeland unleashed rockets onto the invading asteroid. As impact drew near, a haunting question echoed: was oblivion truly the inescapable fate prepared for humankind? So it was that the world's collapse officially commenced. Daylight broke and the cordons vanished in its wake. Having finalized his own meticulous preparations, Xiang Ho strengthened his refuge with reinforced glass and stalwart doors. He persisted in his daily ritual of consuming minor acts of toxin, training his resistance. Thereafter, this man engaged in his regimen, and no exaggeration, he completed an astounding 3,001 push-ups while still enduring poison. Sadama couldn't hold a candle to this one's discipline. Changing into protective attire, Sean Ho cut a commanding figure, then enjoyed breakfast alongside his dog. Awaiting the 9 o'clock broadcast, slumber nearly overtook him, but at last the appointed hour arrived and the television flared to life. The president sat solemnly, delivering an urgent announcement to his people, proclaiming martial law and the sealing of various roadways among other mandates. Zhang Ho felt stirring admiration for the president's course, truly believing no one else could have given the nation a more dignified end. Moved by the leader's heartbreaking condition, he grasped the remote with trembling fingers, unable to embrace such curt finality. And yet this fate cannot be evaded, it's a trial humanity must bear. But this chapter sees Zhang Ho greeting doomsday as a seasoned survivor, no longer naive to apocalypse. Only 4 hours remained before the spores arrived. Half that time he spent traversing another realm, inspecting the array of supplies he cultivated there. Within those stolen hours he stationed equipment for life after the Iron Blight. Meanwhile, as he voyaged elsewhere, the human world faltered. Bedlam erupted, sparking violence among desperate crowds. Fistfights flared, social structures unraveled. Even a portly fellow bearing himself to the world met death heedlessly when struck by a passing car. Some took pleasure in cruelty and violence, immune to remorse or guilt. The final hours of existence were upon them. For the record, I can't help but ponder, how might you have met such annihilation faced with a world's impending collapse? Share your thoughts down below in the comments. The platinum-haired rebel sat casually at the wheel, utterly indifferent to the fact that someone had just lost his life. Meanwhile, his companion shrugs it off, suggesting it's pointless to worry about the car since the relentless iron rot is bound to claim every machine in due time. Their associate brandishes a bat at the rooftop, summoning out the quiet observer who's been lurking up there. He's developed a personal vendetta against our protagonist, keen on harvesting points from Zhang Ho. Zion Ho can't understand why this fellow acts so superior, but notices en route the sky showering leaflets. Even with the world teetering on the edge of chaos, the authorities still show their concern for citizens. It's truly astonishing to witness such compassion. In stark contrast, Zhang Ho relentlessly prioritizes self-preservation, convinced that if everyone acted more altruistically, surviving this apocalypse would prove far simpler. Crushing the notice in his grasp, he muses on the unattainable ideal. Refocusing, he reminds himself to return his attention to practical plans. As the scene transitions, little more than 3 minutes separate the spore's arrival into this world. Zhang Ho amasses an arsenal of oxygen tanks, pondering whether they'll last before the blight consumes everything. He's already committed every possible route through the city to memory in order to keep his supplies well stocked. While checking the time, he briefly wonders what consequences might befall him if he forgot to remove his watch. Even he admits he might be overthinking it. Keeping things straightforward, he dons his helmet. At 1:00 p.m. sharp, the moment arrives when spores make their invasion. Zhang Ho steels himself. He starts up his bike, clinging to hope that fate aligns with the strategies he's formed. Now the infection unfurls, as the spores begin to corrupt the everyday populace. The energy drains from humans, leaving naught but ravening, half-decayed bodies behind. These growling, violet-tinged abominations are quickly lured by a particular clamor. Zhang Ho blazes forward, outpacing most of the undead who prowl nearby. Surprisingly, their numbers here are low. Fortunately for him, a majority of those transformed into zombies simply perished within their homes, cradled by family as the end drew near. What truly piques his curiosity is stumbling across someone who somehow hasn't turned. Circumstances are still progressing favorably. He spies an unobstructed way to move forward. Using a convenient shortcut, he manages to bypass attention while focused on foraging. Best of all, most storefronts still keep their barriers intact. Armed with a sledgehammer, shattering the glass becomes effortless groundwork before advancing inside. Purposefully directing his movements, Zhang Ho operates with deliberate speed. Methodically, he scoops up essentials, well aware that full spore-induced domination will not overtake the infected just yet. His optimum course is to loot the hardware shop ahead of the hour and 45-minute mark. thereby dodging any direct confrontations with organized hordes. Presently, our main character is scooping up everything he manages to reach. He lavishly provides every kind of medicine for his loyal canine companion. After stripping the pharmacy bare, Sean Ho surveys his resource haul, pleasantly surprised to realize he's actually making better time than he'd anticipated. Or so he's convinced, until the instant his arrival at the hardware store reveals an unexpected doubling of security measures. But he isn't caught off guard. His foresight led him to bring those very tanks for this sort of contingency. Zhang Ho ignites the sharp blaze from the oxygen torch. A minor complication arises. The device's roar is deafening, attracting nearby undead. Glancing hurriedly, Sean Ho recalls that even though their detection abilities were reduced in the game, it never took them long to track down the sound's source. He'd faced an entire swarm pressing in, sealing his fate. Having witnessed this with the Russian vessel Chaos, Seeing Ho was already on guard. The enemies before him were still in their initial stage, meaning they were just absorbers of nutrients and simple to repel. As the zombies edged closer, he sprang forward at full tilt, mace poised, confident in his strength to fell them all. The first fell hard to a punishing strike. Sean Ho understood that even a novice could dispatch these foes by aiming correctly. Two more lurched at him, he caved in one skull, then brought his weapon down on the next with practiced accuracy. Through Zhang Ho's own seasoned hands, it became clear the former challenge of the game had been profoundly diminished in the real world. Each fallen undead gained him 2 points, letting him cultivate rewards effortlessly. Yet what truly mattered now was how to deal with the rest of the swarm. Thinking tactically, his first move is to coax them into a narrow passage to make sure he avoids being outnumbered. Still, his avenues of escape are limited because of his current objectives. Luckily, he's got that oxygen torch at hand, so he hastily readies it, certain this is the perfect tool to take care of them en masse. The mass throngs near while he holds them back with his shield, throwing them a wordless caution. The sole reason he'd given space to those grisly, brainless, unattractive creatures is his unwillingness to squander valuable time racking up kills. Crushing bone and flesh, Zhang Ho announces he never had any real fear of such foes. His bold speech only rouses their fury further, prompting them to overwhelm him as savagely as they once did Sukuna. But our hero, moving with near-supernatural swiftness, manages to dart out of reach in time. He boasts, recounting 1 hour and 47 minutes, that he alone invested 500 hours into the abyssal world of that game, and with that experience, defeat's not an option for him. With not a ghoul in sight, Zhang Ho almost laughs at the very thought of being toppled by these chaotic adversaries. Following a powerful shield bash that clears his path, he finds himself entertained by the act of dispatching the lot. As a final treat after the spectacle they provided, Shang Ho sparks his torch into flame. Amid a stack of expired bodies offered up before him, our protagonist relishes the impending spectacle that will obliterate them. After his brushes with the undead, Zhang Ho gathered every supply from the tool shop and set his sights on the police headquarters as his next venture. Upon arrival, it became clear that the armory had long since been pilfered of valuables. Bro was living the real-life version of a PUBG and Fortnite match and recognized he'd come too late. Rather than sulking in dissatisfaction, Zhang Ho unexpectedly stumbled upon a fascinating body carrying a backpack. As he unzipped it to investigate, he uncovered an assortment of treasures, firearms, stun weapons, and various communication gadgets within. His odyssey pressed onward to the 4th agricultural facility. Fortune continued to favor him, courtesy of the awareness ability he'd acquired from the hobgoblin. Moreover, his perceptiveness and craftsman's aptitude, nurtured through point allocation, allowed him to slide through the undead crowd without being ensnared. The zombies were beginning to figure out how to amass themselves, but by then, he'd deftly made his way back to the motorcycle dealership. Every vehicle had vanished except for a lone ATV, so he piled his finds there along with his own gear. It was there, too, that he assessed his statistics as shown in the alternate reality, even opting for a fleeting escape to his dimension for a reprieve and the removal of lingering negative effects. To this day, Shan Ho recognized his gateway ability as a stroke of pure luck. Upon returning to the normal world and contemplating his next destination, two jesters showed themselves, spying him and mocking him over his lack of supernatural strengths. Essentially, they were picking on someone yet to wide awake their powers. Then, one of them recklessly unleashed an electric attack straight at the most sensitive area of our hero. Quick on his feet, Shan Ho braced himself, protecting both his flashlight and nerves of steel as he retreated, increasingly disturbed by this man's peculiar fixation. Weighing his approach, our protagonist reached for the dimensional portal to launch a counterstrike. All the while, the other ruffian kept an eye on the vicinity, ensuring the Walking Dead wouldn't interfere. Seon Ho considered whether he ought to mete out fatal justice since dispatching foes was child's play to him. One punk swaggered forward brazenly, but our protagonist remained unruffled, musing how this stage of beginner's trials wouldn't mark him as a killer, not so soon anyway. But if, by some chance, that label stuck, even then the system viewed one's first slaying as just grounds for warning. Armed with these thoughts, Seonho opened the window of his invisible passage, stirring perplexity in his foe. Though our lead could readily reduce this arrogant blonde to prey, internally he battled with the act of truly ending a life outside of simulations. Because of this, he simply subdued the delinquent with a chokehold from behind, making plain to the punk that Shan Ho was, in fact, an awakened too. Bluntly, our protagonist questioned the adversary's grudge. The truth spilled out. The lout believed Shan Ho's girlfriend had been stolen by him, remembering a time he'd glimpsed the two together in bed. He received a swift kick as punctuation and was left with the ultimatum this would be his last cautionary escape. Seho declared firmly that inflicting harm on blameless people was against his code, yet the punk laughed at him, dismissing such ideals. He insisted they walked identical paths, selfish to the core. With those words he discharged a shot, but our protagonist tapped into his signature aura manipulation, darting away as if guided by an untouchable sense, akin to a masterful dodge. Shan Ho, instead of taking issue with the blonde's words, nodded in agreement. And courtesy of that fool's rambling confessions, he had full justification to eliminate him. He seized the punk by the head, assuring him with cold composure that he was cut from the same flawed cloth. All this while, Siang Ho had been unwilling to recognize such truths, a fact he now faced as he shattered the man's jaw, a thrilling change, for at last the protagonist showed real courage. In digital battles, Xiang Ho had survived more than 100 matches to the death. Even though he met his end in each scenario, none of that matched the bone-deep chill that seized him when he truly contemplated taking a life beyond the realm of imagination. Right then, another coward slips in, but rather than take his life, Shang Ho merely warns the man to remain alert. The reason was simple. A wave of zombies was already descending upon this unfortunate fellow who looked like a budget version of Berthold from Attack on Titan. His fate seemed sealed. The poor soul is soon ripped apart by the ravenous undead, while Shan Ho quietly grapples with his sole priority to ensure his own survival above all else. He denied the man aid, even as he pleaded, because deep in his heart, he believed that there were those in this grim world who deserved no mercy, a reflection of the cold pragmatist he had become. Let us now delve into the intricacies of Sura's murderer system, a mechanic brought to life 3 months after launch as a safeguard against disruptive players. While the intentions were noble, the regulations fell utterly short. For every inaugural slaying, the system would only issue a mild caution, for the developers dreaded losing members of their community. Repercussions came only on the third offense, ultimately marking anyone who crossed the line as a murderer. Should the second incident seem accidental, the game would analyze the circumstances and determine a player's involvement, a loophole some would manipulate as well. What led so many down the path of murder? The lure was profit, enhanced attributes, and the temptation to abscond with others' abilities. The addition of unique powers only served to stoke the flames of avarice within the player base. The formerly mundane survival game quickly transformed into a playground for those with ruthless tendencies. Yet, for all its allure, the new system brought significant perils. Once labeled a murderer, players faced the necessity of endless violence. Before long, a death field, a deadly ring would enclose them, If 3 or more players collectively cast this barrier, all trapped within had to battle until only one survived. 1 hour, 52 minutes. While his group seemed to be engaging in strangely close antics, what mattered was they delivered a severe beating to the would-be killer. You might be asking yourselves if, from this setup, the murderer has some hidden advantage. However, as the game evolved and seasoned players became the norm, any troublemaker was swiftly eliminated by opponents of greater skill and power. Typically, one who takes a life feels an unmistakable rush in their heartbeat, yet our protagonist is oddly untouched by such sensations in this moment. His hypothesis is affirmed. Since the tutorial phase hadn't started, the system abstains from penalizing any actions. This gives XO a window of unrestrained havoc prior to the tutorial's arrival. But he swiftly dismissed that impulse, judging it utterly unthinkable for himself to embark down such a dark road. Rather than descending into lawless chaos, he chooses to pursue his stated objectives with discipline. From that moment on, Zhang Ho's purpose has never wavered: to counter injustice by dealing back a harsher kind. This almost mirrors Lelouch's philosophy of eradicating evil with an iron hand, just as in Code Geass. Flinging his supplies through the entrance, Zhang Ho makes clear that only circumstances convincing him to uphold his standard would push him toward lethal force. The story leaps to some time after 4 p.m., where he painstakingly scouts out a horde loitering outside a warehouse. 1 hour, 53 minutes. The group of undead is unnervingly fixated there, drawn in by a skirmish echoing from within. Inside, 2 desperate factions shout threats, each trying to force the other to leave, but stepping out offers no sanctuary from the ravenous throng lurking beyond those doors. One man openly ridicules the opposing group's foolishness for thinking that he would so easily depart. The swaggering punk in the red hood fancies himself a fierce leader, yet he carries such an air of insignificance that even the makeshift Higaruma from Walmart doubts his capacity to pull the trigger. Driven by taunts, the man lets loose an arrow from his crossbow, declaring with pride that marksmanship was his chosen path in the game. Amusingly enough, the bolt finds its mark on his opponent's shoulder, prompting a pained complaint from the wounded man. As his allies rush to his aid, the shooter relishes his cutthroat approach, feeling perfectly at home in this ruthless new world where only the strong prevail. He demands that the others vanish from his view, threatening further violence should they linger. Eventually, the trio is left with no choice but to admit defeat and withdraw. As they leave, their tormentors hurl insults, and, as a final taunt, the group makes a ruckus by banging on the door to beckon the approaching horde. After raising quite the din and scattering their foes, the group quickly slips away in a new direction. Zhang Ho stands witness to their flight, astounded by this sudden shift in power. So impressed is he that he vows to offer the shooter a token of appreciation, should fate bring them together once more. Returning to our protagonist, he has finished gathering all valuables from everywhere except his own apartment and the armory. With the tutorial's return only an hour away, Xiang Ho ponders his next destination and elects to rearrange his plans. He steps through to another world, ready to tie off the remaining tasks. Let's pause for a moment and recall that game locations swarming with zombies are invariably those offering the richest sustenance, supermarkets and grocers to be precise. For this reason, such destinations are generally aconsejado as best avoided. However, those well-versed in the grind, having logged considerable hours, favor a different approach altogether. Take our resourceful hero, for instance, spreading gasoline around the perimeter. Though resources are scarce in these early stages, he aims to level up modestly by causing a zombie detonation spree, gunning for level 10 before tutorials resume. He intends to access the shop, but as he closes this chapter, reality threatens to intrude. Soon after the initial outbreak of the Iron Plague, the whole sector will be slick with oil, no matter his efforts. Perhaps all that preparation was for nothing. Still, Shang Ho is unconcerned, supposing Dingo will find some delight in this escapade. With the clock ticking, he remains content until the tutorial restarts. Our sturdy protagonist strokes his beloved companion, giving the well-taught instructions once more. At his signal, Dingo bursts forward, sprinting enthusiastically to meet his goal. Meanwhile, the ravenous undead remain utterly preoccupied with their flesh feast, scarcely aware of the nimble hound darting in their midst. Effortlessly, Dingo slips through their grasp, weaving around the zombies with the agility and spirit of a practiced survivor. The youngster stretches out towards the entrance, flinging it open and compelling the masses to follow after him. Zhang Ho observes the scene, genuinely impressed by this unexpected turn. With the dog having distracted the mob, Dingo bolts through his portal just as Eicho tosses his lighter to finalize the plan. The swarm, bewildered, stares as the lighter lands upon the fuel-soaked surface, erupting and blasting them apart. Drop a W in the chat for Dingo. Thanks to this sweeping elimination, our hero's rank climbs to 11. Landing another 116 points and unlocking a new dimensional slot enhancement. By nightfall, he had finished gathering food supplies from the market along with multiple computer towers. He even conjured a portal in the street, aware that destruction was coming for these buildings. Once he ventured to the alternate world along with his bicycle, now obsolete in this realm, Seiho traded all his metals for non-metal items, holding onto a fiber vest for protection and a helmet. He traveled a kilometer from his shelter, arriving at his favorite training area. After laying out his gear, he completed all pre-battle preparations. The finish felt acceptable to Zhang Ho, who didn't even notice the absence of fasteners or zips. 3 minutes from disaster and an ominous sensation creeps over him. He's aware his portal restricts entry to only himself and his belongings. Further reflection makes it clear. Both the drifting spores and the spreading wire blight are carried on the wind. Spores pose a danger to humans and will bring them down. But the steel filament disease lays waste to things. Neither offers any real safety and he must be equipped to face it. He returns to his training grounds far from where he sleeps and circled by timber mannequins. He knows that worrying achieves nothing. When the worst comes and his gear breaks apart, running swiftly will be his route to survival. Though trembling, Shan Ho gathers his determination, opens the portal anew, and remains focused on his objectives. 3 seconds before destiny crashes down and the wire blight begins ravaging the country. Within just an instant, all is swept away. Every trace of civilization dissolves, towers topple, giant edifices fall, needle-like structures shear apart. This metallic scourge within their reality is what prevented humans from creating their world again. Every last thing fell apart in less than a heartbeat. From the safety of his portal, Zhang Ho bore witness, saw humanity plummet into an age of stone. No light shone for the future. Though he'd told himself to be ready, seeing actual doom unfold was infinitely more chilling. Could any of you weather such a catastrophe? Let me know in the comments below. Suddenly, the ground quakes, a violent blast shakes him to the core. Zhang Ho first assumes the ammo supply has gone up but quickly realizes it's actually the iron beads he must prioritize. Fortunately, they are unharmed, yet any comfort for Zhang Ho is short-lived. Nothing about this ruined world gives peace. Our hero seals his portal and places all attention once more on his mission, to carry on without being swept away by emotions and to concentrate solely on execution. That had been the plan, yet when Bro finally reached the refuge, bewilderment seized him anew. The tiny beetles waited with sparkling anticipation. They'd shown up determined to pilfer something once more, but Shan Ho let them chart the path, curious if this gesture meant a peace offering or proposition for exchange. The beetle gave a vigorous nod, clearly happy to acknowledge the arrangements were equitable. He tried to be stern and vexed with these pint-sized charmers, but still, their gazes remained filled with delight and wide-eyed awe. So adorable are they that Zhang Ho's heart softens, prompting him to propose a bargain, confessing with a gentle tone that he desires rare items rather than food. Naturally, he doubted their little minds could grasp the true nature of his requests. For even with the beetle's remarkable intellect, deep understanding between them remained a dream. Abruptly, the crimson-hued one fetched a twig and began to sketch signs in the earth. Our protagonist's jaw dropped in astonishment. The beetle requested an exchange, or for jelly. Enchanted by the proposal, he accepted without hesitation. Yet as he eagerly reached out to seal the trade, the diminutive creature briskly smacked his hand, huddling with the others like sly strategists plotting in whispers. With their miniature council concluded, the red beetle signaled assent to this compact. Even the system declared a mutual agreement on the deal, going so far as to recommend formal documentation. This puzzled him, accustomed as he was to wordless affairs like his familiarity with dogs. Gradually, he realized creatures of superior wit aren't simply owned. The terms of the pact listed both names and clauses, surprisingly strict and ceremonial. One might think these critters had completed their legal studies beside ivy walls. Bro saw no harm and inscribed his name, finding only then that the document recognized the beetles as companions. Shan Ho felt bemused as the busy beetles were poised to dash off for his fortune. He sped back to concealment, intent on gathering treasures for these newfound allies. He bestowed sweet potato jelly upon them, a little extra to honor the agreement's birth. The beetles rejoiced with exuberance and affection, delighted by the alliance they've struck with this thoughtful person. Seong Ho instructed them to eat to their heart's content, and urged them to return with finer things. His endearing manner paired with a humorous yet cautionary caveat. He assured them he'd hunt them to the horizon should trust be broken. Within this realm of gaming, the tutorial arc cast its shadow, heralding an ordeal concealed by a suffocating shroud. With purpose, Seong Ho meticulously prepared for these opening trials, deftly collecting everything essential. His scavengings from others proved unexpectedly rich in quality. Among their belongings he uncovered a ceramic knife, safe from the peril of contamination. Though he'd never considered targeting fellow survivors, diligent searching of their quarters was necessary. After stockpiling his discoveries, he claimed the PC tower and hard drive pilfered from the compound. Then, Seon Ho linked the devices and began scanning through the collected data. The initial finding was an abundance of media hidden within the folders. As he wrapped up his investigation, he stumbled upon a website that left him utterly speechless. He uncovered a modeling shot of Mickey Young, a clear hint that she once belonged to the world of idols. It's only natural she was different from ordinary people. Her extraordinary appearance made such ideas expected. Sean Ho chooses to get rid of the file, his thoughts lingering on memories of times they had been together. Satisfied, our protagonist rises to review the additional rewards granted for achieving level 10. Murmuring "shop window," he sets his gaze upon a sky-blue interface laden with a trove of treasures. The layout mirrors what he remembers from the game. Yet he instantly notices the cost of items has shifted somewhat. Purchasing items labeled as number 6 and 11, Sean Ho witnesses them blink into existence before his eyes, precisely as they would within the game world. Witnessing this, he becomes curious if it's possible to take advantage of an exploit that existed during the game's tutorial phase. He turns his attention next to a fresh ability, the dimensional slot, letting him pull chosen objects from a confined, small inventory. Essentially, it's a swift access storage with room for 5 treasures. Naming each item within, Xiang Ho commands them to appear before him, mesmerized by the box-like shapes. He attempts to pack things away and discovers relief in knowing he's no longer burdened carrying mountains of gear. From now on, his essential tools can be reached anytime straight from that express slot rather than rummaging through his portal. Once all spots are occupied, Zion Ho confides just how overpowered the ability feels in terms of becoming stronger. It promises to be a game changer as things unfold. Preparing to depart, he instructs Dingo to remain vigilant. At last, he's set to head off and complete the opening sequence. In the succeeding moment, Sean Ho returns to a desolated world, this time resembling the aftermath of a catastrophic bombardment that razed an entire metropolis. He earnestly hoped heightened sense and environmental awareness would help now, but they are simply insufficient here. Therefore, he switches to slot 3 for rapid retrieval of a particular item, knowing blindness could be his fate without it. These are the elusive shade grapes, momentarily boosting night vision in whoever consumes them. He pops a glistening grape between his lips and suddenly, Xiang Ho's gaze shimmers greenish gold in the darkness. As a result, distant Zombie Ho's gaze figures become distinct through the gloom. Now what he truly now needs is a truly safe haven amid these safe haven nightmarish amid these remains. It's a central factor. The brutal realities this game inflicts pull no punches. Except the harsh system rarely bothers even warning you about major events, but within the tutorial there remains this single precious exception. That's largely because the appearance of zombie swarms always unmistakably signals that the tutorial section is underway. Thus arises the crucial puzzle. What truly serves to spark this incoming wall of undead? That critical moment is triggered if a member of the horde catches sight of you. Yet, our main character is presently keeping a low profile, deftly slipping past the menacing throng unseen. Another trigger emerges once a participant retrieves an item that instigates the tutorial phase. To conjure forth this peculiar object, our young man is pouring concentration into gazing at a singular patch of emptiness. Here's where the flaw emerges, cracking the floor open with a cerulean fissure, a tangible glitch against reality's order. Sean H. Go cunningly snatches the weapon an instant ahead of its appearance, thus creating a perfect copy of the item for himself. The remarkable twist, this duplicated implement is manifested in the genuine world too, taking the form of the Obsidian Club on sale. Even more magical than within the virtual realm. While the remaining updates to the game's rules remain cloaked in mystery, this single improvement is a brilliant boon, soon to hide it away. Siho catches the clamor stirred by the restless zombies outside, their uproar signaling they are ready to commence. He emerges through the window, tearing straight in to dispatch the first of the undead horde. This man no longer seeks concealment, accepting that these threats will find him wherever destiny leads. With the introduction underway, Zion Ho calls to mind the many routes which could lead him through. The initial win requirement is to rout the zombies, battering them relentlessly just as he's doing until every last soul is purged from the field. Here's our protagonist channeling a real-life action hero, flawlessly dispatching each adversary. For anyone hoping to avoid this strife, there remains the route of making a desperate break through the wall of undead. Our hero sprints forward, launching himself upward and smashing a zombie straight in its core. He then pulls back, dissatisfied with his progress. He yearned for a quick completion like his peers Tagong and Aya, yet it's out of reach for now. Nonetheless, it's hardly the end of the world. Sean Ho crafts tactics as a master, his plan for the session to rush the boss and topple it before all else. That's precisely what he's carrying out at this moment. Not a heartbeat to spare, he races ahead with full intention. Seong-ho is hardly lost even here in the scenario's set confines. Points of progress mark the terrain, and if he loops cleverly enough, he'll summon the boss without delay. Yet in the true world, his only hindrance is the difficulty of pinpointing that location. The power from his shade grapes has nearly worn off, spurring him to quicken his efforts. Seon-ho scours the environment for a singular structure, knowing from memory that it should fall within roughly 3 kilometers distance from the start. He weaves past clusters of zombies, aiming for a sector reassuringly free of their presence. At last he sights his goal and rushes inside, fortune smiling as his shade grape effect lapses just then. Here, amidst sanctuary, he's finally beyond the horde's pursuit. For now, tranquility is his, until the inevitable boss's reappearance. Nevertheless, he must find his way to the rooftop as well, eager to survey the form of the boss's impending transformation. Lost in these ponderings, Seong-ho ascends the stairs only to lock eyes with a figure, a girl, Mikayong. The revelation jars them both. Subsequently, Mikayong reveals that their entire party made it through unharmed. What catches him most off guard is her presence here. Mikayong admits their actions were guided by the handbook, steadfastly keeping together as Kung Hun had suggested. Everything changed when the zombies crashed through, sending them fleeing toward this very refuge. Do you recall that thick-skinned troublemaker? He openly defied our champion's guidance and dragged his group to this very spot. Seong-ho's patience is spent, so he offers MKY Young some no-nonsense counsel. He wrestles with the need to act like a regular person lacking abilities in front of her, explaining that the empowered boss beast is about to manifest at any moment. Upon hearing this, her terror grows, believing he purposefully tracked down the beast, though Bro insists he was merely chased to this locale by force of circumstance. Rather than pressing him further, she lets the matter rest while our protagonist reveals once the boss falls, its defeat drives the hordes into disarray. The barricade of undead evaporates and their savagery wanes. Gimba P. Elver, who essentially is Bro, once said that slipping away or hiding post-boss victory closes the tutorial chapter. He warns her yet again that the boss will make an entrance any moment, and punctually, a surge of electricity arcs within one of the lumbering zombies' bodies in the throng. Mikaeong is unsettled by its tentacles, and Sean Ho inquires whether she's observed anything strange in herself. This oddity stems from superior zombies donning unique headgear that grant them power to suppress specific qualities. Terrified, she hurriedly checks her status screen, bitterly discovering her precious skill has been locked away against her will. Incidentally, this predicament hasn't spared our protagonist either. He softly asks if she still places her faith in him as before, and Mkaeong reassures him, remembering gratefully all the ways he's aided her so far. 2 hours, 6 minutes. Strangely enough, she has gathered every single item he recommended they bring along. With everything ready, Zion Ho instructs she remain atop the roof, purposefully attracting the ravenous horde's eyes. Meanwhile, his plan is to challenge this mutant zombie himself. Though he acts unfazed before her, truthfully he's daunted by the heart of the fray, a boss whose lackeys flank its sides and conceal traits. The boosted zombie threw him straight into a tight spot, though he chalks it up as a matter-of-fact consequence. In the original game settings, there weren't special traits available early on, so such elite monsters didn't spot or suppress what didn't exist. Out of a lapse in judgment, the tactician forgot this important quirk, regretting ignoring the bow for his front slot. Barely has the thought formed before, astonishingly, a bow materializes readily within his rapid inventory menu. Sayango snatches it up, pondering if his minor boons aren't affected, considering this boss's level lags quite behind his. Luck has truly smiled on him, letting him utilize at least his quick slot stash with ease. Swiftly, he arms himself with shield, arrows, and depends on the equipment he's placed in his slots. For a boss of limited prowess, Zanjo reaps no rare abilities or loot. It's a steep price for the strife he'll suffer, a true loss. Yet as it happens, the rest carries little consequence. Devotees of Lincoln Park will recognize that wry nod. Just then Mikeung calls out from on high, grabbing the horde's greedy attention. She ignites a signal flare for added spectacle, flawlessly executing her persuading performance, enabling Xiang Ho to press his advantage. Her acting prowess stuns him, exceeding any of his wild expectations. Buoyed by her involvement, Zion Ho draws his bow, notes his augmentation to stat points, and senses no further deficit. Whispering silent gratitude to the enhanced beast, our hero lets an arrow fly like lightning, arcing down toward the formidable foe. An arrow whizzes past and strikes the beast, drawing a piercing scream from its throat. Unable to bring it down with the first blow, Sean Ho leaps into the fray, eager to savor his inaugural victory over a formidable foe. With a powerful motion, he pins the monster using his shield, forcing it down to the earth. Trapped at last and unable to flee, Sean raises his weapon and delivers a crushing blow to the creature's skull. With the boss vanquished, the seals on their abilities lift and our protagonist is awarded 10 points for his triumph. As he'd suspected, there aren't any skills granted for this, so Ho swiftly surveys the ground for loot. His fortune holds, he discovers a Roboton bracelet that enhances his senses. Astonishingly, there are 2. The surplus is probably thanks to Mikaeong, who appears breathless after dispatching the undead with her unique power. This revelation helps him deduce that the item was distributed to all participants for clearing the tutorial, not solely for overcoming the boss. With a total of 17 bonus points, Zhang Ho realizes this must be due to the game's recent balance update. He then extends one of the enchanted items to her. Mikaeong hesitates, feeling she barely contributed, but he insists. He even fastens the bracelet around her wrist himself, underscoring that her aid was pivotal for his success. Sayango looks her way and smiles warmly, pondering whether their next stop should be the fitness center. Mikaeong glances at the precarious building, and in flashbacks to past footage, our hero remembers that at least 5 floors were stable. Although it isn't an immediate peril, time is pressing for the group. It could tumble without warning, so Mikaeong decides she'll notify the owner later. Once everyone gathers, the hero resolves to broach the topic of the perilous system. But just then, a newcomer captures their gaze. Their charismatic workout ally, Hung Jun, stands before them. The old friends exchange greetings, relieved to see both have evaded the zombie curse. Hung Jun suggests they talk indoors, believing he has much to report. Reunited at last, Zion Ho recounts their showdown with a boss monster. The story awes them all, though he recounts it matter-of-factly, stressing Mikhail's help in luring away the undead. Nonetheless, taking on such a menace solo earns Seon-ho admiration from his companions. Curiously, the tutorial's rewards were absent for Hung and the rest, aside from the standard weapon each had received. Hung Jun recalls not encountering safe zones during their search, only endless living dead blocked their path. The discrepancy puzzles our protagonist, who wonders if tutorial difficulty and achievement requirements are customized for each individual. Xiang Ho inquires whether they scored any additional points beyond simply slaying monsters. As it turns out, Hung Jun did receive points by helping Yuyan, awarded when he saved him from a zombie attack. Given this, Ho recognizes now that life-saving deeds and clever escapes from danger grant players bonus points as well. Mikhail starts to see that it's now easier for many to rely more heavily on abilities unrelated to direct combat. Putting that aside for the moment, Jim Bro approaches the protagonist, ready to address the unspoken matter weighing on their minds. They're all eager to uncover the unique quality that defines him. Even Hung Jun recalls that everyone was bestowed a trait by the system. Now, with the game intertwined with reality, it appears that clearing the tutorial has awakened something in everyone. Thus, the original trait of Sean Ho stood as a first blessing meant for him alone. The ever-growing contrasts between the game and real life leave him in a daze. With things in flux so rapidly, Zion Ho knows he can no longer depend on what he learned or experienced in the game. A point of fascination for him is what Mikhail is contemplating, as they too received an item during the tutorial, just as he did. That's when Jim Bro decides to share his own special ability. Considering he's a brawler at heart, it comes as no surprise his gift is a physical buff. Yuan's situation, on the other hand, intrigues them. His skills at doll making have transferred into an ability to sense and move through puppets. Mikhail is endowed with the blink power, and now that all have disclosed their strengths, Bro has little choice and must do similarly. He truly hesitates to let go of his ultimate card, but revealing it will save him from any suspicion of deceit. It's their friend's impending reactions that intrigue him most of all. When he goes quiet, Mikhail attempts to engage Hung Jun in conversation, while our protagonist remains buried in contemplation. All he wants is to explain his capabilities to the friends he sincerely trusts, the ones who can shift and grow with any situation. But for now, Xiang Ho chooses boldness and fabricates a tale, claiming his skill is known as attack prediction. Yuyan brims with energy. This would mean Zion Ho cannot be taken by surprise ever again. Yet our protagonist humbly lessens his image, explaining that his talent simply allows him to glimpse enemies' movements like ghostly echoes. Changing the subject with ease, he inquires after their upcoming intentions. Their mentor seeks to consult Bora and the other individual, yet for now his priorities are simple: climb in strength while surviving these hardships. The knowledge dispensed before calamity struck spoke of how the shop's functions would become available. This compels Hung Jun to put that first, after which he'll make sure those who dared lay a finger on MKY will regret their actions. Sean Ho feels satisfied at this guy's boldness, confirming for him that the wisdom he shared truly had merit. Eager for answers, Yuan intrudes with a question about our protagonist's rank, a curious but telling inquiry. His curiosity stems from the fact that our protagonist managed to down the tutorial's final foe all on his own. Yuan surmises that if Zhang Ho performed this feat, he must have been dispatching zombies from the outset. As he voices further keen observations, Hungjun suddenly sneaks up to lock him in a rear chokehold, relentless as ever. Just my intuition, but I get the impression Kyung and Jimro are attempting to protect our protagonist as best as they can. Even Ho picks up on this, realizing the extent to which they're shielding him, shown by how far Hung Jun took his wrestling hold on the poor boy. Meeting concluded, our protagonist is eager to strike out alone on his individualized mission. His friend halts him to offer some treats and pass along a pair of binoculars crafted by Yuyan. It's a helpful little gadget, and Hung Jun places it in his comrade's hands, reminiscing about how many times they've come through before. In comical fashion, the man even brings up his divorce at the oddest opportunity. Initially, Hung Jun was reluctant to reveal the awkward truth, but truly, this dim-witted hulk separated from his wife rather than give up his chiseled form. At every meal with his wife, he feigned eating, genuinely opposed to giving up his hard-won physique. Talk about a true fitness devotee. He traded marriage for his workouts, and now his strange story is shared purely as encouragement to talk openly, even about awkward matters. Judging by their responses, Go starts to notice both his friends clearly sense his fabrication. As Hungjun readies to go, the friend clasps his arm, promising that when their levels rise and they've earned experience, he'll choose to face survival at their sides. Reassured for now, Xiang Ho removes himself from his companions once again, assuring them he'll return, as he turns to clear snow from the path. Zhang Ho is stunned by the sharply dropping temperatures, astonishing for a time of year normally defined by warmth. He's frankly worn down by this rampant unpredictability, though he managed to stash vital provisions in his shelter in time. Otherwise, he'd have been caught off guard. Despite everything, circumstances aren't so dire. Ice crystals have, by chance, bolstered his defensive perimeter. With conditions like this, no goblin will test his lines for some time. Originally, Xiang Ho intended to dig a protective moat, but the frigid ground is impenetrable now, so he sees there's little point in trying under these conditions. He'll need to bring order to the chaos and rethink his approach for tomorrow. Let's reflect for a moment on what the game is built around. Survival life is a pure test of endurance. Each player may bear a mere 5 items simultaneously and has room for just 10 skills. Once one exceeds that stamp, the oldest talent fades away, creating quite the dilemma. To thrive, a player has to become an apex force, capable of any necessary tactics for dominance. Yet that survival of the fittest mentality is just the game's tendency. In reality, wildcards appear, like Mikhail's sudden entry or Hungjun's statement that no checkpoints are appearing. Observing all this, our protagonist becomes convinced the rules were probably rewritten during the week he didn't log in, leaving him at a disadvantage. So how ought Zhan Ho steer his plans right now? His fundamental aims remain unchanged: procure resources, hone his abilities, and ensure his continued survival. For now, he must stick to his strengths by charting a trek to the forest of the alternate world, where canal digging and the clearing of owlbears are essential for protecting the region. Outside the game, he's determined to scan the zones set ablaze by festival fireworks and keep watch over the lively villa gathering. Bro tries to lay out goals for the distant future, though his mind nearly collapses under all the possible tasks. Seiho has finished confining himself to inflexibility. Now he'll move with the circumstances. The instant midnight comes, he'll rush off to Guangali to stake out the celebratory grounds, weapons in hand. Suddenly, we're brought to another scene where 2 figures berate a subordinate over his uselessness. Even Akan proves beyond him. The ringleader means to smack some discipline into him for backtalk, but his female companion intervenes. She smoothly charms the leader, proposing a drink, yet this man remains on edge, certain that Shan Ho still lives, perhaps awakened. His obsession is now bent on ensuring our protagonists end as soon as they cross paths, never guessing that his target conveniently overhears the exchange. Noting that the pursuer is even more intense than the girlfriend, Xiang Ho wonders whether the aim is sheer destruction. He suspects there's no alternative but a decisive response, even if it comes with its hazards. He steps boldly into the open before the thugs, who instantly raise their guns, not keen on seeing anyone dare to emerge. Perplexed, the man wonders what could possess Zhang Ho to venture out at such a late hour. Yet our protagonist calmly insists that the dangers lessen at night due to how zombies behave, assuring that one can roam as long as the dawn-seeking creepers are avoided. His counterpart jeers, calling him a naive newcomer who's trying to play the expert. He points out yet another rule: zombies only emerge past the 7th level and above. At merely level 5, he's certain that even keepers won't make an appearance. Zhang Ho flatters his insight but, unfazed, asserts that the so-called truth in Hawk provided was in fact a fabrication. While the would-be tough is bamboozled by Ho's statements, 2 hours and 16 minutes pass as our hero stuns with an ominous twist. He reveals that instead of collecting fireworks, he's now opting to storm their sanctum. His adversary scoffs, believing Shan Ho has lost touch with reality, and tells his gang to bring the boy down. Before they can attack, a terrifying noise approaches from their left, stopping the trio cold. A monstrous keeper emerges in pursuit, casting a dark shadow over the group. Seizing the moment, Shan Ho lures them away and dashes off, forcing the criminals to follow him desperately. One, confident in his speed-enhancing ability, tries to close the gap, yet with cruel irony, crashes face first into an invisible portal. The blow comes so suddenly that he busts his nose and hits the ground hard. Ignoring the fallen fool, the remainder keeps up their mad chase after Ho. As for the Forsaken runner, the keeper seizes him and dispatches him in a flash. Trying their luck, the rest split up, yet instantly the woman barrels right into an about-to-burst bonehead creeper. Alas, it's far too late, she's scattered to the wind by the blast. With so many detonations, I'm amazed a Hollywood director isn't calling the shots here. The force of the explosion brings the cocky thug trembling to his knees. Crawling for his life in panic, he's unsure when it began to unravel. The dreadful keeper readies itself to feast, but with one last act of courage, he lashes out fruitlessly. His weapon glances off with no effect. His destiny sealed, the gruesome beast yawns impossibly wide. Fear destroys him, hopelessness wins, and a final crushing bite ends his miserable tale. With grim purpose, Zhang Ho arrives, rifle in hand, aiming through the portal. For a fatal ending, he squeezes the trigger. The bullet tears through the keeper's back, but the monster only reels rather than falls. It's evident that even the bullets are starting to falter against the infection, though not all their power is lost. Wielding his rifle, our friend unleashes a flurry of follow-up rounds, battering the beast again and again until finally, it crashes lifelessly. Both his foes vanquished, he's rewarded with an increase to level 12, nabs 20 points and requires his terrain tracking skill. Though Sion Ho claimed a life through clever maneuvering rather than direct force, the weight of it clings on just the same. Now that Cha Chun's gone, there's nothing left but the dust as our hero collects loot, dismisses him as worthless, reflecting on his own depths in the process, and resumes his days gathering undisturbed. Shang Ho infiltrated Chilchin's lair. Though he anticipated little, he discovered the place brimming with valuables perfect for later selling at the auction house. Moreover, Qilin probably would have passed of natural causes even if our protagonist hadn't ended his life himself. Close to Guangali, Zhang Ho successfully acquired the festival fireworks he needed. With help from his loyal pup, the two easily maneuvered past the monsters, evading danger due to his higher level. Dispatching the remaining dormant zombies was simple enough, netting Ho additional experience and hastening his advancement. In a single night, Ho made it all the way to level 14. Progress was strong, yet an obstacle still lingered on his path. Shortly after he finished his loot runs around 7, he realized something new about Cha Chin's stronghold. Transporting resources from one spot to another truly turned out to be a bother. And due to snowfall in the alternate world, our protagonist was held up and unable to simply stash the goods through his gateway. The risk lies in inadvertently causing a spark which could wipe out the entire base in a blast. Placing stores underground wasn't without its own issues either. Thus, leaving them here remained the wisest option. Up next, he intended to make his way to the Villa District to check in on Su Yan's well-being. He'd also find a spare moment to scout Kaiyong Jun's hideout during that time. At that moment, a quiet drizzle outside caught his ear. He glanced out through a tiny gap, wondering what new trouble might be brewing. Soon after, a mighty typhoon swept through reality, battering the world with storms for 2 solid days. This gave our protagonist a chance to slip away to the other realm and push through completion of the moat. Here, Seong Ho soon realized that any overly vigorous actions now carried genuine danger in the icy chill. A whole day slipped by like an instant, and by the time the moat was finally done, exhaustion overwhelmed him. He couldn't bear to lift another finger. The welcome surprise was a gradual thaw as temperatures warmed, until the final shards of ice gave way and vanished. At last, serenity was restored after the relentless freeze. Gentle sunlight, a temperature fit for human comfort. Freed from wintry extremes, he turned his gaze to the storm outside and beheld furious tornadoes tearing the city asunder. Awakeners found their movements hampered in the real world by the unyielding weather. This gave him a perfect window to dedicate himself to the next step of his plans. Back in the alternate world, he delved deep into the forest. Incidentally, firearms truly were the ultimate trump card in survival games like this. Not for any particularly unique reason. Rather, they only entered the narrative towards the end and could only be acquired after resolving the metal plague predicament. Out of the blue, Dingo picked up a scent and veered right. This guided our hero to discover the owlbear lounging contentedly near a lake. The pup's adjustments made traversing the terrain effortless for Xiang Ho, guiding him straight down the best routes. Beside loyal Dingo, Xiang Ho sensed a tremendous upgrade with his own awareness and terrain detection stats. It granted him a sharper grasp when surveying his surroundings. The ferocious owlbear thrashes the surface of the water, chasing fish to feast upon, yet it remains oblivious to our protagonist's subtle watchfulness. With just 15 bullets, Zango set his sights on his boldest target to date. This beast surpassed even the Guardians in strength. Thus, even though these bullets maintain their power in this realm, a minimum barrage of 7 would be required to bring the horror down. Unable to replenish his ammunition anytime soon, Shangho has no choice but to wield each shot with meticulous purpose. He squeezes the trigger, the first bullet staggering the creature at the base of its neck and rousing its venomous wrath. Glowering menacingly, the beast turns its seething gaze behind, only to discover that no one lurks among the boughs. Xiang Ho, already stationed in his second vantage spot, lets off 2 more rounds, one sinking into the owlbear's left shoulder, the other ripping through its right limb. Each successful shot draws a tormented bellow from the formidable beast. At last, Xiang Ho had weakened his foe enough to confront it head-on, meeting its glare without flinching. Exchanging tense stares, Xiang Ho boldly dares the feral owlbear to charge. Enraged, the monster storms toward him, wild as an untamed bull. Murmuring his slot numbers, H-Go calls forth the exact tools he requires into his palms. Snatching his lighter, he skillfully readies the fireworks, lobbing it with the steady precision of a bowler. Simultaneously, he commands his shield from the inventory. As the owlbear's claws swing menacingly close, the firework ignites with a burst, bedazzling the creature and momentarily claiming all its attention. Bathed fully in the eruption of blinding light, the predator's gaze is overwhelmed, plunging it into desperate disorientation. Just as in previous battles, this is Shan Ho's method to gain the advantage over stronger beasts. His opening has arrived, so he deftly grabs slot 4 and strikes for the kill with a powerful melee blow, marking the conclusion of this terror's rule over the valley. With composure radiating from his eyes, he delivers a deeply punishing stab into the owlbear. Thus falls the mighty predator. His triumph yields him 25 points and lifts him to level 15. His victory gifts Shan Ho the silent movement feat, along with additional compartments in the dimensional inventory. Toppling the beast drains every ounce of his stamina but provides just enough respite for our protagonist to delve into the new skill's description. For such an immense challenge, though, he can't help but feel that the wealth of loot hardly squared with the effort. However, perhaps the finest prize is the owlbear's claws, easily marketable as quality weapon material, slot 5 engaged. In the spirit of resourcefulness, Ho, taking on a lumberjack's point of view, aims to retrieve as much as possible from the carcass. Having finished the tricky work, the protagonist delights in savoring the beast's meat, finding the flavor exceptionally refined. Dingo, having indulged in 5 portions already but still yearning for more, receives a tossed fish from Xiang Ho, who hopes the endearing companion will rapidly mature so the pair can undertake new tactics and perhaps solo their own prey. Our protagonist soon observes that the playful ball of fur has indeed grown larger. Now, bellies satisfied, the adventure must continue. Intrigued, Xiang Ho turns his focus to the auction house ability unlocked at level 15. The system is straightforward. There is a fixed commission of 10% and only 2 basic actions: list or retrieve items. Previously only charging 5% in-game, this new rate feels thoroughly excessive. As he checks the retrieve items option, he is startled by an unexpected discovery. Someone else had already listed something before him, suggesting there's an individual out there who possesses enough prowess to reach level 15 even swifter than our protagonist managed. Xiang Ho regains his composure, knowing that certain awakeners are simply equipped with advantages better suited for combat styles, so their faster progression makes sense. After all, his own gate ability doesn't lend itself to fighting. To see the listed items details, Sean Ho enters the comment section, discovering only the owner's notes complaining about rising levels coming too quickly for their taste. Today, they're even using a note to attack keepers, and from the particular rhythm of their words, Sean Ho strongly suspects he can identify this person. In this world, guarding your identity equates to significant benefits. As a result, overweight geeks would disguise themselves as adorable girls, like many gamers, even tweaking voices for further concealment. The universal chat was truly the only spot where users' ID could be identified. Barring that method, players could mask these vital details forever without worry. Veteran competitors mainly have one big hurdle: they don't usually follow the creator's planned systems. The fact that this listing ends with excess signals to everyone that he craves the spotlight more than anyone else. CO opts for simplicity, sending a humble and brief voice greeting. Almost instantly, the other party inquires about who he is, astonishing our protagonist with how the mannerisms vocalized here so closely match their in-game character, Gimba Clover. Zion Ho waits with intrigue for a response, suspecting the other might not believe him so easily. The other party first chuckles, then bursts out at him, sharing how exasperated they were by his delayed return, pretending as if Zhang Ho was coordinating with the president, only to realize that's not true. Apparently, everyone assumed he was the nation's secret savior, distributing leaflets, while Zhang Ho simply chose to disclose information to the authorities. He's certain that someone else must also cooperate with officials using inner-game knowledge. For clarity, the fellow happens to be particularly muscular and is fully aware that publicizing one's abilities means courting disaster in this world. It's quite a sight that such a powerful person would go by the playful handle Rabbit Princess. Unexpectedly, the same man openly offers to describe his ability, unconcerned, as soon the two of them will move forward together. His attribute is called Resurrection. He is able to use it recursively by spending points, which explains why his skills, physical, elemental, and special resilience, vaulted his level up to 17. Inquisitively, the old friend queries Zhang Ho about his own quality, but to his surprise, Zhang Ho flatly refuses. Hearing so, the Rabbit Princess is taken aback, seeing Ho honestly admits that he carries deep-seated trust issues and hasn't even shared such secrets with his closest confidants. He assures the other he does in truth have faith in him, but much prefers confiding in someone face-to-face. Rather than take offense, the companion truly understands this stance. As a generous gesture, Rabbit Princess urges him to revisit the auction house right away. Compliance leads Sean Ho to spot a unique ring made of enchanted metal. This object can be gained during the tutorial, and the seller explained he handled every corner of the place simply to acquire it. All he asks in return is a mere 10 points from our hero. Seeing Ho is nearly speechless, he can hardly believe that someone would part with such a valuable treasure for free. However, the man seeks to affirm his honesty and trustworthiness towards Sean Ho by revealing who he truly is. Incidentally, these two crossed paths early on in the story, embarking on numerous missions side by side. Their camaraderie blossomed among the seasoned players, yet such a show of sincerity still catches him by surprise. Nevertheless, he appreciates receiving the ring. Now he's determined to demonstrate his own earnestness, so he offers smoked trout and the claw of an owl bear for auction. Rabbit Princess nearly loses control upon seeing those offerings, her mouth watering at the sight of the perfectly cooked trout. He quickly hits the accept button, amazing himself at how monsters have already begun appearing. Yet our protagonist drops a hint. It's because of his unique trait that he keeps encountering these creatures. This serves as his emblem of faith. Additionally, Sean Go emphasizes that while he's unbothered by their meeting up, in the real world his friend must always be properly dressed and should stop repeating that silly phrase he clings to, as it only attracts unwanted attention. The guy easily agrees, deciding to switch his motto to Jas instead, insisting on going unclothed only when by himself. Seong Ho finds himself exasperated by this fellow's persistent wish to stroll around public places unclothed. The narrative now turns to Rabbit Princess, who wraps up a lengthy 2-hour and 27-minute conversation with his comrade and revels in his first satisfying meal in ages. As it so happened, the violent windstorm finally fizzled out, giving way to dazzling sunlight that shone down on him gloriously. The stout fellow considered it a stroke of luck. Either some blessing fell upon him, or his old companion was promoted to deity. Regardless, Siaken launched himself out the window like a mighty Power Ranger and drove a zombie's head straight into the earth. He beams at the prospect of reuniting with his friend, basking in a hearty sense of companionship after a long while. With gusto, he tosses the zombie aside as if it were a puppet and revels in the chaos. But trouble soon comes knocking. Sioki overlooked the location of his own safe house due to being, despite all his talents, a hopelessly inept pathfinder, channeling the same lost vibes as Zoro from One Piece. 3 days vanished in the wake of the typhoon's end. The comrades staying at the gym were gradually getting used to their new apocalypse routine. Yuan advanced to level 5, now able to command his dolls farther away. Through a folded note launched on a paper plane, he told Xiang Ho they were eyeing a taekwondo studio near his residence for their new base. There was also tidings that Kung Hun and Bora had become a couple. And most unexpectedly, Hung Jun's diligence paid off. He'd surged to level 10 and gained access to the shop feature. Whenever he received such detailed messages, clocking at 2 hours and 28 minutes, he would share further advice with his friends, pinpointing resource spots he'd already prepared for them. Afterward, he would send the paper plane on its return flight, wishing his guidance would enable them to rise in power as smoothly as he did. Afterward, our protagonist Chance reopened the auction house, a reminder to himself that he ought to reconnect with Siaken, who'd been replying less frequently of late. At the moment, his buddy is busy delivering crushing blows to zombies on the road to Busausen. Just as in both the game and real life, once the threshold of level 15 is crossed, the number of points necessary to advance further shoots up. This hell-level zone is notorious for its brutal grind. Shan Ho summons his status menu and muses on how points and levels follow an exact ratio. For him to step up to level 16, it would take about 100 zombie defeats. This target, while ambitious, is perfectly within reach so long as he devotes himself to the hunt. Yet for our protagonist, other aspirations captivate his attention, setting his sights firmly on those. After 2 hours slipped away, Seon Ho found himself in his refuge, bestowed with a superb meethil dagger as a present from his diminutive companions. These beetle-sized craftsmen had fashioned it with their own tiny mandibles, even presenting him with the precious ore they'd collectively chosen. Seiho reminds these diminutive artisans that, being mere beetles, it should be beyond them to craft such wonders. His skepticism provoked the adorable insects, leading him to ultimately believe in them. Yet to measure their talent, Go hands over a coin, challenging his small friends to turn it into something new. One sprightly larva seizes it with its tiny pincers, and commences to gnaw industriously with keen jaws. In mere instants, a perfect facsimile of the knife arises, this time shaped from a different element. Seiho and I are equally astonished. Plainly, the beetles possess genuine talent. It's mesmerizing how their little steel shines so sharply, though the original weapon lacked expert refinement. Yet his blunt critique crushes their spirit. Essentially, he decries their efforts as lacking. Crestfallen, the small crafters begin to weep, prompting our protagonist to offer a chance to clarify with scrawled words on his board. Since their contract binds them, he wishes to listen to their explanation. His beetle friends race up with fresh markers and sketch an image showing a goblin looming victorious over their defeated forms. Due to this obstacle, they were unable to complete their handiwork to the expected level. Xiang Ho inquires where these goblins are lurking upon the map. At once, the beetle chief points out their presence lurking not far from the nest. Armed with these details, Xian Ho promises, "On my next quest, I will rid this place of those pesky green fiends." But should this promise be upheld, the beetles in turn must honor their vow by improving the blade's craftsmanship even more. Now, after 2 hours and 30 minutes, spirits high over such fair terms, Zhang Ho even muses about cremating the enemy in gratitude for the beetles' benevolence. Beyond this, he wishes to entrust them with a new creation, independent of the extermination pact. The beetle artisans await his next petition, and Xiang Ho feels delighted by the camaraderie, shaking their minuscule appendages jubilantly. Clearly, these beetles are destined for greatness. and as Seon Ho continues his gathering alongside Dingo, he envisions new heights for their collaboration. Onwards the day went, as undead adversaries evolved into mightier versions than those encountered at the beginning of their ordeal. Not hesitating, our hero closed in on a significant target and brought his weapon down with savage force on the zombie's skull. A single crushing blow transformed its head into a crimson smear until the old label appeared on his trusty club. Others swarmed in, but Xiang Ho tossed them into oblivion, dispatching 2 more instantly. One creature lunged stealthily from behind, eager for surprise, yet Zhang Ho spun back powerfully, connecting like a champion batter. Now, putting zombies to rest had become a mere pastime for him, void of real feeling. His ultimate aim, the Eden Villa. When the violence ceased, he finally beheld this ornate estate. 2 hours and 31 minutes later, its elegance stood out, even if modest, compared to the disarray tearing apart the main city. Had he not been snared by calamity, even Seon Ho realizes he'd rarely glimpse such privilege, let alone dwell within these opulent bounds. What truly troubles him deep down is questioning whether Suyin survives at all. Any communication from her remains absent. Yet it looks like Kung Jun and Bora, at least as non-awakeners, fare reasonably well. It's now been officially established that awakeners are incapable of passing the zombie spores to those who are not awakened. While concern for Soon doesn't haunt our protagonist, even imagining her fate as a zombie doesn't rattle his heart, it's clear that emotion is lacking in this one. For him, the only thing worth his concern is the precise whereabouts of the villa. This villa sits near where my own aspirations are anchored, in short, Kung Jun's thoughtfully hidden refuge. There's also the state-made time shelter set up a short distance from there. Seon Ho tells his companion to hop on his back, explaining that he'll navigate the shattered elevator shaft to reach the heights above. The setting is ideal for survivors to assemble in safety, though simultaneously it's a place ripened for the greatest shares of conflict. After his relentless ascent, Xiang Ho reflects on how excruciating such an effort would be for someone without his stamina. The deliberate placement of that climbing rope suggests it's Suin who's been tending to the security of this refuge. 2 hours, 32 minutes. Pacing through the corridor, he locates the specific apartment and taps gently at the door. A shout bursts from within, assuming an entirely different visitor. Suyin peers through the slider hatch, warning the outsider to stay away, claiming there is a killer lurking nearby. She's taken aback when she spies him at the threshold, not the person she'd braced herself to find. Xiang'o offers a greeting and reveals that his errand stems from collecting the medicine funds according to their former bargain. While technically a sound excuse, it borders on madness to fuss over such things amid apocalypse. The villain finds his behavior odd, but there's an odd charm to his bizarre aura, enough to entice her to open the door and bring him in. She's determined to answer all of Xiang Ho's questions and fully explain the murderer situation. As soon as both settle onto the sofa, Suyin begins releasing a flood of astonishing revelations. She launches into a rapid-fire monologue, her quick, scattered details oftentimes leaving him struggling to keep pace. In short, this shelter is the focal point. 3 additional factions occupy the areas nearby. 10 individuals make up Party C, an alliance pressing to open the time shelter to distribute resources. The other 2 groups firmly objected, and abruptly a murderer materialized amongst them, stabbing a victim without warning. Sheer numbers alone lead our protagonist to deduce that the figure at the heart must be Jiayong Jun, with the killer recruited from his own circle. Regarding Jiayong Jun's abilities, there is reason to suspect that his mind manipulation power depends on presenting an agreement for it to take full effect. Picture it as a condition, like when Louch requires direct eye contact to give others commands in Code Geass. Sean Ho adopted an almost willful ignorance in front of Suyin, unwilling to see her entangled further into chaos. The fact that the killer appears only plainly after the proposal was denied outshines all else. Both Party B and Suyan's allies sustained losses, victims to this homicide. Meanwhile, Group C suffered no casualties. Then one must wonder what motivation spurs Party C to try and access the time shelter far ahead of schedule. Confused, Xiangho at least discovers Suin's restorative gift. She can mend wounds, albeit only lightly. that alone holds a certain value. As someone playing a supportive role, venturing out to hunt turns into a truly daunting ordeal for her. Lacking leveling opportunities, support players understand that Party C's leadership must lie with a non-combat type adept possessed of a unique skill instead. Someone like him would naturally seek out resources to hasten his advancement, or so our protagonist presently believes. She actually considers his reasoning to be valid, since the power of a leader isn't necessarily reflected by the might of those who follow. With that settled, Zhang Ho then observes that the collective must shoulder personal struggles, compelling their leader to resort to severe actions. Their hypotheses align seamlessly, yet Song Ho can't help but wonder why Suyin hasn't reunited with her companions so far. It turns out she had unrelated arrangements for the day, intending not to gather supplies but rather to meet someone confiding love. There's something oddly perplexing in this. Suyin expresses her frustration, pointing out that her crew is riddled with fools, which sparked her burst of temper when the door opened. These are the sorts whose single-minded obsession is fulfilling base desires, individuals moved mostly by passion. Confronted by this peculiar truth, one even our protagonist hadn't anticipated, Suyin nonetheless maintains it's understandable, believing her teammates aren't inherently wicked. She inquires about Sion Ho's aims from this point onward, to which he responds by outlining his plan to survey the time shelter. The notion unsettles her, but he reassures Suyin that it's strictly an exploratory mission. The encroaching zombie waves also guarantee the team won't assemble around, ensuring safety. Before departure, Bro presents her with a golden, glowing stone that holds its light for 2 hours and 35 minutes. A small token. It's a stand-in for a candle, acquired by unlocking an item from the virtual shop. She's amazed at his strides as Sean Ho assures her that should his assignments proceed as planned, he'll pay back every favor he owes, with extra. Next, Party C and its chief stand before the threshold of the time shelter, their conversations circling around the cleansing ritual. His followers report that the assassin has struck down yet another member of Team B. Survivors have steadily shifted their stockpiles, but confidence runs high that the realm of Team B will soon be cleansed entirely. On the other hand, Team A remains peculiarly inactive. To spur them into action, he commands that another from their group be eliminated, determined to provoke a reaction. Regarding their recent movements, Team A has become increasingly elusive, though they observe a woman from their ranks, Suyin, making her way to Eden Plaza, which makes her the focus of their pursuit. Kyong-jun unveils his power, issuing the order for her assassination. As for the other man under surveillance, his true nature is hidden, his very identity yet undetermined. Even as his aide bows with regret, Kung-jun's irritation simmers regarding the prevailing confusion. He's certain that the individual in question resides somewhere in Bushausen, but his exact location remains a riddle. Kung-jun is desperate to discover this man's whereabouts since, recently, bloodshed by members linked to him isn't yielding any points at all. That failing lies at the heart of his dealings. Without a timely solution, the mysterious player whose possession of the paralysis toxin predated the world's downfall will utterly consume him. Essentially, Song Ho's past actions haunt Bro, leaving him anxious for professional help. He remains fixated on reaching level 15 before the day of the grand auction, longing for acknowledgement from the other area leaders. Consistently, all he seems to value is how he's perceived, and it's at this point that his subordinates herd in a pack of the undead. Appreciating their efforts, Kung-jun grabs a Molotov and hurls it beneath the mob. Flames quickly engulf the gathering until it's obliterated. This action rewards him with 40 points, pushing his level to 9, yet 6 formidable stages still await conquering. Jun orders the entire group to undertake 3 crucial missions all at once. The first demands that they find the locking device protecting the time shelter. The second is to gather additional zombies so he can enhance his level further. Lastly, the third duty, laced with his deepest bitterness, is to hunt down the mysterious player yet unidentified. As he spends 2 hours and 37 minutes issuing directions, our protagonist watches him grow agitated before the gate, feeling a peculiar delight, though he hopes Kyong-jun's eagerness remains in check. After all, Suyin is ready to lend her support, and soon the seeker who searches for Xiang Ho will in turn become the quarry. Moving swiftly into the next act, everything unfolds just as Suyin predicted. A man drops to one knee to make his feelings known, much to her irritation, as she cannot understand how he thinks courting is appropriate when there's a murderer prowling free. Shouldn't safety be prioritized above all else? This earnest fellow relies on a special gift of foresight, trusting it will keep them secure. Yet to her this is nothing but a careless risk. It comes as no shock then that a comrade perished during one of their expeditions. He tries to clarify that the murderer was rumored to be within the B-team section, assuming they must be safe here. However, from her perspective, dealing with him grows tiresome given nothing has truly been verified. He clings to hope, pleading with her to accept him, a desperate plea that immediately sours Suin's mood. She spins around, refusing his entreaties, but the man's fixation on her shows no sign of stopping. Abruptly, echoing like Yagami's infamous move, his name seems to be sealed with fatal consequence as pain grips him. This instantly heightens Suin's vigilance. Such signs could only mean the murderer is just steps away. The supposed clairvoyance fails them yet again, and with threat closing in, every second counts. Knowing the killer likely possesses a means to sense life forces, escaping the plaza quickly is their only option before a death duel is triggered. The young man at last tries to be helpful, attempting to scout out the killer's location, but it is too late. The assailant, blade in hand, is already upon them. Suin continues to admonish him, contending that he seems cursed to bring misfortune wherever he goes. Yet at least now they've gleaned a vital clue. The murderer's attire matches exactly the uniform assigned to the C-team. Without warning, the murderer throws open the death field, summoning a fictional domain and locking them all in combat. Now imprisoned and lacking fighting expertise, their sole hope lies in finding concealment quickly. The grim fact remains, though, this murderer wields prowess in battle, making their demise likely in an instant. Suin chides him for not grasping a key concept, that in these duels the murderer is unable to flee at the onset. As for hiding, she reveals, "I have a strategy." She instructs him to ready an anti-iron death torch, putting faith that fate might grant them a timely rescuer. But right now, the enemy who has appropriated a blade with Gordon Ramsay's finesse rushes forward, aiming for her throat. However, Suin, nimble and resourceful, evades the first strike and expertly takes advantage of the opportunity by flashing the torch directly into the attacker's eyes, leaving him temporarily blinded. For a moment, he's left dazed, but Suyin gets overly confident and neglects the crucial step of actually fleeing. Consequently, the girl is abruptly sent sprawling by a punch that hurls her backward as if struck by pure force. She lands several feet away, crimson spilling from her lips, painfully aware of how foolish her premature triumph was. The assassin closes the distance, intent on completing the act while she pleads for aid from the other survivor. The same man who had been pleading to show his worth as a companion turned and bolted in terror, which only reassures Suin that rejecting his half-hearted confession was a blessing. Watching his frantic escape, her mind wanders to the fragile brevity of life, especially as she's now only a breath away from perishing beneath the killer's raised blade. Out of nowhere, a calming voice addresses her as Ho questions why her eyes are closed. Our champion has stepped forward as her shield, deflecting the threatening knife from her. Then Sang-ho delivers a ruthless kick to his foe's stomach, paying him back just as he had done to a woman. Suyin observes as this young man extends his hand, gently reminding her that now is not the time to embrace despair. A little later, she's tending to her wounds while he reveals that, indeed, the C-team's leader possesses subtle psychic powers that sway the loyalty of his followers. Fortunately, as for her injuries, they slowly mend thanks to her reasonable recovery talent. Sean-ho also informs her that the other would-be escapee wound up used as bait and did not survive. While she considers Hansong's demise, he urges her not to be consumed by fruitless sorrow. For now, their main obstacle is contending with an assassin whose astonishing recovery and resilience are so great that even Suin doubts they have any viable answers. Zhang-ho adds that this sort of outcome is typically the final challenge in such trials. Battles for survival are meant to conclude in a confrontation with the main harbinger of death. Also, whenever the death zone fades away, swarms of the undead converge from all sides, effectively sealing any paths of escape. Yet despite all this, there's a peculiar glitch. one which explains why he guided her to this very place. A sky bridge links several high-rise structures here. Just like when the earliest survival match began, soon the killer's frenzy will reach its zenith. His murderous passion is obvious in the crimson fury of his gaze. With each contraction of the deadly field, attuned to his feverish anticipation, an opening tears the barrier, giving just one brief chance. Xiang-ho instructs Suyin to flee the instant he gives a sign. Offered this hope of survival, she still wonders if he can endure the entire battle alone against so vicious a foe. He answers simply that he has no alternative but to see it through. Each killer is granted a unique ability to guard against unforeseen disruptions, and Xiang-ho is resolved not to let this one elude capture. First, he must invoke the anomaly, for if leaving the area is impossible, all their efforts will count for nothing. Soon after, he directs Suan to the third floor and then prepares to meet the threat directly on the ground level. In this place, he noticed the drumming of his own heartbeat growing more intense, a sure sign that the murderer was close at hand. He was ready and eager for the confrontation, yet astonishingly, Bro found no one in sight. Without warning, a devastating blow struck from the flank, prompting Xiang-ho to hastily raise his shield. The murderer's unique gift and ability to glide through solid walls made evading him useless.